OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's bang on 7:30. It's Thursday morning, which means the Ireland team has been named overnight for the final and decisive test against New Zealand. And as expected, Bundee Aki comes straight in. So he's really the only change from the weekend. Keith Earls comes in to take his place on the bench, having captained the midweek team. He'll obviously be a little bit tired, but buoyed up by the victory on Tuesday against the New Zealand Maoris. So the team is as expected. Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, Tyke Furlong, Tyke Byrne, James Ryan in the second row, Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Fleer and Caelan Doris. It's Gibson Park, Sexton. On the wings is Mac Hansen and James Lowe. Bundee Aki, Robbie Henshaw and Hugo Keenan make up the rest of the team, with, as I said, Keith Earls taking his place on the bench. The only other change, so Herring, Healy, Beelum, Kieran Treadwell, Jack Conan, Conor Murray and Joey Carbery. The big news from the All Blacks team is that, well, their pack looks pretty fearsome. It's Retallick and Whitelock restored to 4 and 5, which means Scott Barrett goes 6, and they also are starting with Will Jordan at 14. So you could say this is their strongest team out for the very first time in the 3-test series. We'll put that to Alan Quinlan on the show a little bit later on and see exactly what the crack is with his expectations for it. Loads of other stuff going on as well. Raheem Sterling has been pictured in Hollywood in his new jersey, which is the Chelsea jersey, and he says it's a bit of a homecoming for him and the opportunity to play in front of his home fans. It'll be the Limerick and Kilkenny lads playing in front of their home fans on Sunday. Owen is in Limerick. Owen, good morning to you. I can hear you in the background there. How are you?
I'm very well, Ger. What's the crack?
You and it's Joe Dolan over your shoulder, right? That's who that statue is.
Yes, Mr. Joe Dolan / Terry Wogan, whichever angle you want to take on it. We're out on Harvey's Quay beside the Terry Wogan statue, and yeah, it's pretty, like, I think you really say you can hear me. You can literally hear roadworks going on somewhere, so I apologise for that. I've just been speaking to Noel Hogan of the Cranberries while there were street cleaners working around us. He is also one of those morning warriors as well, who gets up early and tries to attack the day from early on. So we had a good chat, which we'll bring to you tomorrow morning. But it's been good to be back here again this year as Limerick get used to this at this point. Get used to being in an All-Ireland every single year.
And does he just live in the city, like close by to where you are now?
He does, yeah. He made the point that actually when their star was rising years ago, that they all decided to just stay at home. They got plenty of travel done while actually performing around the world, and the humility that living in Ireland probably brought, where nobody really got too carried away with your own fame and your own star rising. That's something that they actually kind of liked, and all of them decided to stay put in Ireland and fly home to Shannon every time they'd come home from Los Angeles or wherever they would be.
All right, so the good stuff's coming on tomorrow's show on Friday when I won't be here. Good stuff. Excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're going to be asking Joe Quaid a little bit later on for his thoughts on it and exactly what's going to happen at the weekend. If you have a view, we'd love to hear from you, because there's a growing sense that maybe this game is going to be very, very, very close, as opposed to the coronation of the second greatest team of all time, who are on the verge to becoming the greatest team of all time. So we'll see. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Alan Quinlan's going to join us at 7:50. Joe Quaid is going to join us at 8:10. Owen's been speaking with the former Limerick manager Tom Ryan. David Herity is going to join us at 8:50. Rory Keane is going to join us to talk rugby at 9:10, and then we've got some Brian O'Driscoll goodness from last night for you at 9:30. So where do you want to start, Owen? What do people take success for granted in Limerick, or is it still so new and fresh and amazing that they're just basking in it?
Still so new and fresh, and they are absolutely still basking in it. This is just like what I imagine 2018 would have been like in terms of their appreciation for this team. Actually, no, sorry, it's different. It's probably more similar just to last year, where they have had their success now, but they have not got to the point where they've started to take this for granted. There is still this sense that this is temporary, and that is the reality of sport. All success is temporary. Your team will genuinely fade out, and they will exit stage left. And I think that because they're not a Cork or a Limerick, or not because they're not a Cork, a Tip or a Kilkenny, they have a realisation that maybe they are something of the nouveau riche, and that might mean that their time will expire, and they're all appreciating it so much. So one of those places that's definitely feeling that is the St. Patrick's Club in Limerick City. Now, St. Patrick's are a small enough club. They're a dual club here in the city, and their greatest export, I guess you could say, is Gearóid Hegarty. He comes from the St. Patrick's Club. He's played football and hurling all the way up through the age ranks. So I went out to the club yesterday to have a chat to a few of the voices around there. I spoke to the chairman, who is Larry Cross. I spoke to one of his old football coaches at underage level, Tom Downs, one of his underage hurling coaches, Sean Maher, and one of his co-players at the moment with the club, Patrick Mullen. So here's how those conversations went.
We have one rugby club and probably 4 soccer clubs around the one parish. And we have another J club actually in the parish. So look, we have to fight for any kids that want to play, but thank God at the moment our numbers have increased massively since 2017, 2018.
I suppose back in the Mackey era, we would have a lot of players that would have played with Limerick. I mean, they won a minor title in 1958, and we had 5 players on that team. But then again, you know, when you're in the inner city, you're competing with other sports. And Limerick is the sporting capital of Ireland, I suppose. When it comes to other sports, it's hard for the fella has to make a decision, and usually you lose out to rugby or soccer, whatever the case may be. But for Garrod to take the route that he took and for what he's achieved, it's absolutely tremendous for us, and it's tremendous for the people of the club, especially the other guys, because we thought we'd never see days like this again. And as I said, to have one of your own clubmen on it, it's phenomenal, you know.
You soldier alongside Garrod for St. Patrick's in both codes.
Yeah, hurling and football. I've played with Garrod since he came up to the adult ranks now for many years. Garrod has been in all the underage teams. I've watched Garrod the whole way up because I had a couple of brothers involved in the same team. So look, I could always see the talent was there. Garrod was floating in and around Limerick teams for years, but he was never very prominent in the Limerick teams.
Was he always the biggest fella on the pitch?
Yes, tallest by a mile. Yeah. He was. But yeah, no doubt he was. There was nobody anywhere close to him. He wasn't always as tall as he is now, obviously. But he was always a little bit above everyone else. Yeah.
If you had to pick, is he actually a better footballer than a hurler potentially?
Jesus, he's a serious hurler. Like if he didn't make it in hurling, he'd be the next John Gallivan when it comes to Limerick football terms. He was so good, you know. Right. I mean, he captained Limerick at under 21 level in football, you know, and he's just a phenomenal athlete, great presence, great brain, and you know he will able to read the game.
All you have to do is come up here any night. Since 2018, the turnouts and the crowds that are coming here for underage training now, it's not down to Garrod solely, but there's an awful lot of work going on by a huge amount of people, but when you see Garrod up around the field, you can see people are and not just the kids, but the coaches and everybody are, you know, they're standing up straight, they're that little bit taller, we're proud of where, you know, what he has done and what he's brought to the area,
it's great. You don't know how much it means to a club like us. We could be considered a small club, and the profile he's after giving us is massive. Everyone knows now where St. Patrick's is, and everyone knows where Garrod comes from.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant, you know, when you've played alongside a lad like that. And not only that, to see a clubman, or the elders of our club being so proud, it's fantastic. My father's involved in the club for years, and I can't watch a match with him because he's shouting for Garrod. You know, it makes everyone in the club very, very proud, and we are all very proud of Garrod. It's easy for the likes of myself, who was a young lad, to say 1973. We'd known Ireland since 1973, before this team came along, you know. But we didn't feel that pain, and our elders have all felt that pain. They've had no success, nothing to celebrate, you know. So now that it's coming around and we actually have a member of our club involved, it's unprecedented and it's brilliant.
How proud does Garrod Hegarty make everybody in this club feel?
Just getting emotional. It's extra special when they make it any once the final or the final. But when you're on clubmen involved, it's extra special, you know. And what we've achieved, what Garrod has achieved in the last 4 or 5 years, has snowballed outside there. That our membership has increased. But we've kids, we've over 400 members. Everyone hurling and football, and they all want to be the next Garrod Hegarty. And it's phenomenal down here for us that I suppose we're on a long time, but I suppose go back 6-7 years ago, our membership wouldn't be as big as it is now. But a lot of work has been done on underage, and that's typical. That's down to Garrod, I suppose, and the success that he's had, you know. And in fairness to the men, if any spare time, he's around here. He'll coach the lads. He'll talk to them. He'll present medals. He's no autographs, no problem whatsoever, and he's so laid back and he's down to earth, you know. It hasn't phased him one bit. And all the kids love him, and as I said, they all want to be the next Tiger. You know, and it's.
Do you remember how you felt when you saw him win his first All-Ireland? with Limerick?
I do, yeah. It's cried my heart out to tell you the truth, you know. Just so proud of him. And I suppose being around clubmen and to see, you know, what he gone through, and disappointment at minor level to come along and achieve what he's achieved, and to see him on to 18 win it. Well, first of all, to see us win it out since '73 was absolutely a tear to everyone's eye, but to get all involved in it was absolutely super, you know. And it's, I suppose, something you'll take to the grave, but I cried my heart out when I want to tell you the truth, you know. Like every other adult, I suppose, in Limerick, that we've seen the bad times and the hard times, but to finally got over the line, and as I said, when you're on clubmen involved, it's absolutely super. It's great for the parish, it's great for the people, it's great for the club.
Owen Sheehan making the country cry again.
Yeah, I'm just on a mission here to wrestle Grode Hegarty away from hurling and just install him into the Munster Championship. You know, I think the Munster Football Championship. I mean, I think it could do with a player like Grode Hegarty at this point.
A big claim made in the middle of that, just kind of slipped in under the radar. Of course, Limerick being the sporting capital of Ireland. I'm like, that's interesting. All right, okay, we could have that war next week, but certainly we're going to come back to that.
Yeah, we might have to come back to that. I don't know. There is a claim. I know that Dublin and Cork will absolutely fight that tooth and nail.
Per capita, there's definitely a claim at the moment. You know.
Yeah, 100%, and also just the variation that they have and the success that they've had over the last 20 years in a load of different sports.
We've kind of buried the lead, right? It does appear at this stage as if we're not going to have Keane Lynch taking part in the All-Ireland hurling final. This was news that you were relaying to us yesterday. Literally, the man on the street was stopping you to tell you that there was an issue with Keane Lynch's ankle.
Yeah, a FedEx delivery man on the street on O'Connell Street stopped me yesterday and was wondering if Keane Lynch is out, because he had obviously just got word that he was out. And I just heard a couple of moments previously to that he was injured in training. I did catch up with one of Keane Lynch's uncles around this time. He very tactically and very smartly, I would say, told me that he was going to get in touch with Valerie after he spoke to me. And, you know, would it have been good journalism or just being a bit of a dick if I texted him after the conversation to be like, sorry, so what did Keane Lynch's mom say? I didn't send that text anyway, but...
You can do both. I mean, it would be in character, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true. So I didn't do that, but I did catch up with Keane Lynch's uncle, not Kieran Carey this time, but Sean Carey, the more ginger of his uncles, I would say. So it was good to catch up with him while we were standing outside in the sunshine, almost getting sunburnt. And yeah, we just had a good chat in the city centre here in Limerick yesterday about Keane Lynch and a little bit about the Pro-Am last week, because he was playing in it.
I'm not as famous as my brothers, but look, yeah, it's a great week for Limerick. We're chomping at the bit. Sunday's coming up for us, and we can't wait for it, you know. So a great time for us, and we're just making the most of it, you know. And looking forward to Sunday, and fingers crossed it'll go the way for us.
You are, of course, a Patrickswell man, but you're in a Han. You've moved to a Han at this point, haven't you? You've left Patrickswell behind.
Well, I don't know about left behind, but I'm the blowing. Yeah. And seriously, yeah, I was born and raised in Patrickswell. Played my hurling in Patrickswell all my life, but moved to Han about 24 years ago. And couldn't have moved to a nicer place, a better club. And my son now, Nathan and Chloe, they both play for Han. And proud of Han people. And my wife, of course, Dan is from Han as well. So happy out there. You know, it's Mick Mackey country and the whole lot. And the Mourns are out that side of the neck of the woods as well. So look, happy to be there. And I haven't been treated as an outsider as much, you know.
And maybe one day it'll be the Keane Lynch versus Mick Mackey debate when all this is said and done.
Oh God, that's a big one, but I have to say Keane Lynch, while he's a different gig, and Mick Mackey, there were different times. Yeah, it's great to talk about it, great to do the comparisons. And sure, Keane we know what Keane is made of and what he can do. And sure, Mick Mackey, the legend that is Mick Mackey, and you know, so we could debate about that going down the road, and all other debates, but so far we're just embracing it all, you know.
What has this season been like for you as a family, obviously, with Keane not getting the amount of minutes that he would have liked due to the injury, obviously?
Oh yeah, well really, it's great to have Keane there, don't get me wrong, but we're all Limerick to the core. Like, Keane has missed it, we've been there, but we still follow Limerick. We want him there, but guess what? It's a collective thing for all of us at Limerick. We were long enough without it. We've come down Jordan's Road before with lumps in the throat, and we just want Limerick to win. Great if Keane is there. If he's not, listen, we're just well behind him as well, and fingers crossed he will be. But guess what? We're all Limerick, regardless of who's there, and obviously we want Limerick to do well as a collective, you know. So it's fingers crossed, Owen. That's what we're hoping for.
Are you nervous watching him?
Not too bad, because he's a talented guy. He's just, I like to kind of watch him to see how good he is and keep the goggles on him, because you get a glimpse of what he is. He does stuff so fast in real time. But again, his mother obviously would be chomping at the bit of that one. But just more proud
that it's the nephew, and of course then to see all the rest of them to click together, and they seem to be such a bonded band of brothers, you know. So great to be part of it and great to see them. I think they're a special bunch, and we need to make the most of them.
Obviously, Valerie got onto the pitch in the 2018 final. Were you far behind her, or were you trying to get on the pitch yourself?
No, I just leave Valerie work away. You know, I christened her Mrs. Obama. You know, it's easier to get in contact with Mrs. Obama than Valerie. But, you know, it was great. You know, she got onto the pitch, and, you know, there was a great photograph in the Limerick Leader of her embracing my brother Kieran after the 96 final of the loss. It was a tearful embrace, and to see this one of tears of joy, it definitely got the heartstrings going, you know. Yeah. So it was great to see it. There was that bit of irony, the tears of sadness and then the tears of joy. It was brilliant, and I'm delighted for her and for Keane, and of course all of Limerick. And I think all credit must go to the management team that are over Limerick, the whole lot of them, from John Kiley down the whole lot. They just nailed it. They seem to have a great bunch together, and they're just so coherent, and it's great to see it.
How much does it make it all the more sweeter for you, given that you've had to obviously experience those couple of disappointments in the 90s and to come through, not to become contenders, but to become a fairly dominant team at this stage?
Yeah, it's a great feeling, Owen. You know, you went up there kind of before in kind of hope, without being disrespectful to who was there. Now we're going up with more than hope. We have a bunch of guys here, and it's a great feeling. We're humble, don't get me wrong, and you know, we're not saying that it's our time. Well, it is our time, make no mistake about it, but we want to make a bit of hay while the sun is shining. But it's a nice feeling of anticipation. But we know, well, it's not going to be easy. We're realists. But you know what? We know we have a great bunch of guys here, and we're just embracing it and making the most of it.
If people were paying close attention to the JP McManus Pro-Am a couple of weeks ago, they might have spotted you swinging a club. Who were you playing with at the Pro-Am?
Oh, I had the pleasure of playing with Patrick Cantillé on the Monday and Rafa Cabrera-Bello on the Tuesday. Both consummate gentlemen, and I have to say, pleasure to play with and a pleasure to meet and greet with, and we even presented them with a slitter after each round, and they were just thrilled to bits with it, and it was a pleasure, you know, really was. And of course they were blown away with the fact our hurlers are amateurs, but brilliant, and a part of the whole week, you know. Right. So all we want now is the icing on the cake Sunday to make it the perfect month, you know. Yeah.
Could Cantillé potentially win the Open the same day Limerick win the All-Ireland?
Do you know what? It could be bet there on. Do you know what? And you know, I see he was joined fourth the weekend, but you know what? I wouldn't rule it out. And I wouldn't rule Pádraig Harrington out either. You know, what a week it would be, and for them two things to come together. But fingers crossed, we look on and hope for Sunday, and we wish Pat Cantillé and the boys the best in the Open. You know, you just never know.
Who's the best golfer in that Limerick team?
Oh God, there's a few of them there. Like Keane wouldn't be, and that's for sure, you know. But I think, off the top of my head, I think Ger Hegarty is useful enough, you know. But other than that, there's a few boys that be risky. I don't know, does Shane Dowding play a bit now, but Shane has gone. But I wouldn't put past them. They're great ballers, all of them, and well able to hit the ball. And they play the manner from time to time, you know. So they'll be well able to put their hand to it if they had to, you know what I mean. But I'd say at the moment I'd give it to Hego, even though I'm not sure. Sorry, Garrod, but you know, you know, I'll hold my counsel on that because I just don't really know, to be honest about it, you know.
What's going to happen on Sunday?
Oh, I think it's going to be a ferocious affair. And I think whatever team goes out, I think Limerick knows what Kilkenny are going to bring to the table. But make no mistake about it, Limerick are going to bring a lot to the table as well. I think it could go down to the wire, and I think it'll just be a ferocious battle. And at the end of the 70 minutes, you know, I think it's going to be down to the wire, and may the best team win, you know. And it could be just a puck of a ball in it. Yeah. And I just think on the day, I'd say it could go either way. Fingers crossed, I hope it's Limerick's, but it's going to be a ferocious battle, and looking forward to it.
Prices tightening slightly. Limerick 3-point favourites as we stand here this morning. And I think it was 4 earlier in the week. Maybe there's some other rumblings in the background, a bit of concern around some of the other key Limerick players. But sure, look, we'll wait and see until after the game, really, to find out exactly what the truth is about that. How are the fans preparing?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it's. I always find Limerick is an unbelievably colourful county. That when it comes to bunting and knowing that their team is in a big game, there's no better place to come than Limerick. On the front of the Limerick Leader this week, you've got a picture there of this house. This is Ken and Trina Daly, who are in Grange, County Limerick, near enough to Brough. And when I saw that they were on front of the Limerick Leader, I said I had to go out to that house and see what the crack was. So I met Ken and I met Trina, and they invited me to their house to have a chat, have a look.
South Limerick and Brough would have been traditionally a GA stronghold. And then two gentlemen from the local area actually got banned from the GA back in 1969, and they set up Brough Rugby Club in late 1969 and early 1970. So that was the history of Brough Rugby. And then obviously John the Bull Hayes would have been our most favoured son. Went on to play for the Lions and for Ireland, and is back now. Himself and his wife are very involved in the club. helping out with the underage and what have you. And then obviously in more recent times, the hurling has the hurling has always been there, obviously, but with the success of Limerick, and obviously with Paul Brown and Sean Finn being involved in Limerick over the last 4 or 5 years, it's meant an awful lot to the kids of the area, to be fair, you know. So
the GAA ban inadvertently gave Ireland Sean Hayes.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I'm sure John would have probably found his way to rugby anyway without Bruff, but that was the history of Bruff. So they celebrated their 50th year, obviously, back in 2020. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they never got to celebrate it in the way they wanted to. But they're 52 years on the go now. So, yeah.
Can you talk us through then the local GAA heroes, or heroes probably more apt?
Of course, Sean Finn now, our magnificent defender. We're so proud of him. He's a great clubman, a great ambassador for the sport, a very down-to-earth guy. I was involved in a fundraiser for Bruff GAA recently with his mum and his twin sister and my own sister. We did an ABBA tribute. So when I was above in the house, his mum Siobhan said to me, "Do you want to see Shawnee's medals?" And I went, "Yeah." So she pulled out a box on top of the counter and started to produce all the medals, and it was just very casual. I know if my son had that many All-Ireland medals, they wouldn't be in a box on the counter. They'd been a big encrusted frame up on the wall. And then we had to go in and we had to look at all his All-Stars. So, you know, it's just like, I'm so proud of him. I can't sleep this week, so I don't know how Sean's mother is managing, because he'll tell you my heart's up to my mouth over the whole thing, and just nerves, excited nerves. It's like being a child again, and you're anticipating Christmas, but there's a fear in case you wake up and you see Santa Claus downstairs, and that's exactly how I'm feeling. And I'm a silly fool, but look, it's great times. We are loving these times in Limerick.
On an unrelated note, when you mentioned Sean Finn, I saw your dog inside there barking away with a Limerick jersey on him. What's his name?
His name is Finn, called after Sean. Funny story about that. We got him on Christmas 2020, just after the COVID, the Christmas All Ireland, and we were above in Bruff one day, and we had him in a knapsack on my back. Like, how quaint is that? But anyway, we met Sean Finn's mom, and we said, "Siobhan, we're after calling the dog after your son." And she said, "Did you call him Shawnee?" And we said, "No, we called him Finn." So his name is Finn, and he's taken over the place in our affections, because our children have grown up and they don't want us anymore. So now we have the dog. So everyone knows about Finn. Yeah.
Can you talk us through the front of the house?
Basically, Trina's mum started a tradition back in the 94 All-Ireland of putting a man on a bike outside, and I think the sign said "on the road to Croker" or something along that line, and people used to stop up and take photographs. So unfortunately, Trina's mum passed away in 2017, and when the 2018 All-Ireland came around, we said we'd like to keep going with the family tradition of the man outside the gate. So we had the man outside the gate in a chair, and we put up a sign at the time and put up a bit of bunting, and it's kind of grown from there. So yeah, every year, luckily enough, nearly every year we've been in an All-Ireland since. So even the Christmas All-Ireland, we'd green lights, obviously in the wintertime, up or outside the place. So we've done the same this year, but we decided this year he needed a partner. So we our daughter was getting rid of her bed, and we decided to do an adaptation on the bed. We made it a bit smaller, and we got him a female companion inside in the bed, and put up a sign then with the three in a row on the front of the bed, and then on the back of the bed we have "Make room in the bed for Liam." So we're hoping that come Sunday night we'll be able to fit another Liam McCarthy between the two in the bed outside.
And anybody who picks up the Limerick Leader this week will see on the front of it, which is quite the honour on All Ireland week. What's your favourite part of what's going on out the front?
I think first of all, it's the ability to be able to do it, because if we had been beaten by Galway in those dying seconds when my heart was coming up my throat, well, then it wouldn't have happened. So I think the highlight for me is the thinking up of what slogans we're going to do, and you dare not think what slogan you're going to do until you're in an All Ireland. You know, it's not mentioned, or it's not allowed to be discussed. So I think it's the whole. It's this week. I'm loving this week. I'm loving the anticipation. I work with Limerick City and County Council, a lot of Clare people, a lot of Tipperary people, and the crack is mighty. We're having a green day in the council on Friday in anticipation. So I'm loving everything about this week. You know, I'm loving hearing the cars beeping. You're here at night and you hear cars pulling up outside, and you look out and another car pulling up to take a picture. It's great. It's brilliant. Yeah. We're loving it. I feel sorry for poor Shawnee, because he's only living up in Bruff, and I'm sure he passes up and down the road and he's going, "Oh Jesus, Trina, don't be pressurising me." But sure, look, what can we do? You know, we're all behind him and the team.
Yeah, I just was checking the age there. Sean Finn, still only 26. This Limerick team are not going anywhere anytime soon, are they?
No, that's a pretty scary prospect, and like you'd wonder like if they get over the line on the weekend, especially without Keane Lynch. Those conversations around comparing them to the great Kilkenny team are going to go nowhere. And like I'm not sure it's been spoken about that much. I'm sure the Kilkenny players aren't thinking about it, but it is quite fitting that the current Kilkenny team can actually damage that conversation somewhat by winning on Sunday. Even if Keane Lynch is missing, and even if Limerick don't have their best team out, I think that conversation goes away somewhat if they're not on 3 in a row. So I think they have to get to 3 at least consecutively before that conversation holds up.
One of the other things is that last year's All-Ireland final only had 40,000 people at it, so this is like post restrictions, and I think that gives extra motivation to Limerick too, that they haven't experienced this in such a long time, like even though they've been at the absolute peak of the game for quite a long time, that there's something special about this All-Ireland final, winning it in front of a full crowd for them, that just has to be an extra inspiration for them.
Definitely. Like December of 2018 is the last thing you can compare to this. Like, I mean, that's France winning the World Cup. If you take your mind back to that summer, like that just feels like an absolute age ago. 2019 getting caught is obviously something that's hurt them quite a lot. But I definitely feel all throughout the year there's been this anger about Limerick, even though they've got no right to be angry. They're all Ireland champions, but it's obviously their psychology. And I think part of that is the fact that they feel that the last couple of years weren't quite perfect in terms of celebrating for obvious reasons. I think then you throw in the Kilkenny aspect as well this weekend. They're going to be hugely motivated. For a team who've got back-to-back All-Irelands already secured, I think they're going to be as motivated a team as you're likely to see.
Yeah, 3 out of 4 is not bad, but 4 out of 5 and 3 in a row is very special, particularly in front of that full crowd, as I say. Oh, and what are your plans for the rest of the day? Where are you off to next?
Off to Kilkenny now after this, so we've got a full day planned up there to chat to a few of the fans, a few legends of the game. Hopefully call out to Kilkenny Elvis's house and get a song off the man himself. Will he be serenading you tomorrow morning on OTB AM? This is only one way to find out.
Right. Well, if I knew enough Elvis songs, we'd be able to sign off with a cheesy Elvis pun here. You must have something. No?
I was look. No, I actually genuinely don't. Yeah. But he can do it. I mean, that's the whole point. It would be bad if an actual Elvis aficionado showed up to Kilkenny Elvis's door, because he might just steal the limelight. So I'm not going to do that, Kilkenny Elvis, if you're watching.
All right. Well, we'll see you tomorrow, Owen. Thanks very much. We're going to hear more from Owen a little bit later on. He's been in conversation with Tom Ryan, the former Limerick manager, not the Director General of the GAA, at 7:57 this morning. I've got to tell you about our competition, because if you're interested in hurling, then make sure you're staying tuned. This week, All-Ireland Hurling Final Week, obviously, we've 4 tickets to give away on the show. It's all thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. 2022 marks the 6th year of Bord Gáis Energy's sponsorship of the GAA Hurling All-Ireland Senior Championship. And to celebrate, every day this week, we're giving away a €150 one for all voucher, and more importantly, each winner will go into Friday's draw for an incredible grand prize of a €1,500 one for all voucher and 4 tickets to Sunday's All-Ireland final between Limerick and Kilkenny. To enter, tune into tonight's show. It is all with thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. You can search the hashtag #GiftOfTheGab for more. Up next, Alan Quinlan live from New Zealand reacting to the team news. First, here is Andy Farrell saying he hopes that Ireland have saved their best performance to last heading into the final test.
Everyone realises the size of the task in hand, but there's a lot of excitement in being able to deal with that. I think the best part of where we're at is that we know we can do better. I think what we've done pretty well over the last period of time is have a clear understanding of what our game is all about and what we need to do to get better, and it becomes more clear and obvious the more that we push on together. So, albeit we had a decent result in the last test, hopefully our best is saved to last.
Alan Quinlan, good morning to you. Good evening to you.
Morning, Ger. How are you?
Pretty good. Getting excited about this now. And the All-Ireland final this weekend. So it's going to be a fairly epic weekend of sport. We haven't even mentioned the Open yet. But the teams have been named. As expected, obviously Gary Ringrose isn't there, so Bundy Aki comes straight in and Keith Earls goes onto the bench. So, it's as unchanged a team as it's possible to have. Whatever bumps and bruises they have are not significant enough for anybody to be out. So it's effectively, minus Ringrose, a full deck for Andy Farrell to deal with. So he must be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I think we probably wouldn't have expected it at the start. The way that he's kind of selected, I think, the team. And we were chatting last week about changes, guys getting games and stuff like that. But there's a series decider on the line here now. So, he'd gone for that continuity again and picking the strongest team possible. I think Gary Ringrose being out, obviously, as you say, is the only change there. And I suppose he's back in the team to go out and try and start the game well and continue it. And I think Andy Farrell gets the mood of the week every time. He's saying there about the reaction that you're going to expect from New Zealand. We're all expecting it. Every newspaper you pick up here, there's stories about the All Blacks and their needed to reaction, the pressure they're under, giving out about the referee, loads of different things, different players under pressure. It's everywhere. It's really, really different sort of pressure this week. Players fighting for their futures, I suppose, and the coaching staff as well. So it's a strange situation for New Zealand because they don't find themselves in this position. I think back in 2009, Graham Henry was, when he took over, I think team were going through a bad spell like this, and then he went on. I think they lost 3 games in 32 games after that, gone on to win the World Cup. So it's not a usual thing to happen here, but I was chatting to someone. I was in the swimming pool today, and they were just, it's amazing the way everybody it consumes them here, the rugby. And so it's a great opportunity for Ireland. I think, obviously we can keep debating and talking over the psychological challenge and what Ireland are going to expect this week. If New Zealand win the game, it's still a great tour for Ireland. Is that good enough for them, though? Are they kind of allowing that to kind of seep into their mentality? I don't think so. I was at the team announcements today, and I just think they're pretty focused. They look like a team that are ready for as Keane Lynch's uncle said there, a ferocious battle.
Yeah, and that's what they need to do. And the All Black team named seems stronger than any of the teams that they've had so far, because
it does, yeah.
Retallick and Whitelock are partnered again, which means Scott Barrett goes back to the back row. And we did their analysis piece with Derek McNamara earlier in the week, and he was making the point that if anybody from the second row is missing, it weakens the team. There's a knock-on impact then, because you obviously don't have Scott Barrett in the back row, and so the work rate comes down. But also, Artie Savea did not really play most of the game. He is a world-class player, and so you add in Whitelock and Savea to the team, and it's a completely different side from the team that took the field for the last 60 minutes last Saturday.
Yeah, and Lala, the tight head, he probably would have started the first test if he was available. Tuinga Fassi played those first 2 tests at tight head. David Havili would have started in the centre. I think his form for the Crusaders in Super Rugby was outstanding this year, as was Will Jordan. I think somebody compared Will Jordan to me on week 1 when I asked him how good he was and how much of a loss he was, and he said, look, he's a modern day Christian Cullen, which is a fair compliment to get. So I think of the 4 that come in, obviously Whitelock is a huge boost to him, just the way he runs their line out and his presence and experience. It was amazing last week. He was out on the field after the game with the extra players who were doing fitness, the guys who only played short period of time, and some of the other subs. And Sam Whitelock is in his suit, and he's giving water to the players. I just thought it was really interesting that he was out there involved with them, trying to motivate them, and he's a really important leader in the team. So obviously with Scott Barrett going into the back row, it gives him more of a dimension in the line out as well. And I think they've got the balance share of their back row wrong. And a lot of rugby people here in New Zealand I was talking to as well during the week, effectively Sam Kane, Savea and Papali'i were 3 sevens, and they're all excellent players in their own right. I think Savea has taken the number 8 role and done a brilliant job the last couple of seasons, but concerns about the balance of their back row. I think obviously with Scott Barrett going back in there, he played exceptionally well in that first test. So yeah, it looks like a very, very strong team on paper.
So does that swing things back in their favour when you're thinking about what's going to happen at the weekend, or is the confidence that we got under their skin last week, is that important?
I think it's important. I think this is a different test and one that we've never. It's new ground, really. Because it's a long time since we've toured New Zealand and played these back-to-back games. It's 10 years, so it's a new experience for these players. Obviously, the experience of beating New Zealand the last couple of years, going back to Chicago, there's been a reaction every time, hasn't there? Afterwards, the games afterwards, and New Zealand have won those games and won them convincingly. I think, it's pretty telling what's happened. So the expectation probably in the narrative is that same will happen again, because that's what history has shown us in the last couple of years. But that's new ground for this Irish team, and I just think that they've proven that they're a very, very good side when they're focused, when they're physical, that they can hurt the opposition, they can hold on to the ball for a long time, and we actually have a very, very good team if they're fit and well and they're actually playing well. That's probably the key, the collective. I think it baffled New Zealand a little bit, particularly last week, just to start again. It had a sense that these guys are not going away. They've given 40 minutes in the second half in Eden Park when we should have shaken them off. We should be scoring more tries. We should be winning this game by 40 points, and they're still here banging away right up to the 80th minute. And then to start again in Dunedin. So, I think we found a little bit here, and some of the other media did as well, the compliments week one, quite flattering, and not sure what way to take them. But I think they do respect Ireland, and deep down there's probably a little bit of a fear now. But look, they're definitely going to come out. I spoke to Tyke Byrne today, and I asked him about the fear and the aggression and the anger that they're going to bring, and he said, look, we expect that, but and we've got to match their physicality at least, but we've got to be disciplined, I think, and control, because you get too emotionally involved in the emotion of the occasion and you can lose focus. So I think Ireland have got to just try and click themselves, make sure their fundamentals and their basics are right, Ger, because the breakdown, the scrum, the line out, 3 areas that they lost control of in Eden Park. So it's a really, really intriguing challenge. Probably if you asked most pundits and most people, they'd say, look, we fancy New Zealand to win this game. But for me, the real intrigue, and I love the fact that Farrell said, this is where we want to be, this is the test we want, this is the challenge we want. We want them coming out firing, and we want to see where we're at, and can we handle that? And that's the intrigue of this.
The refereeing has obviously been under the microscope since basically the first 5 minutes of the first test, and there's been wild inconsistencies. There's been a misunderstanding of the laws. The game itself is actually chaos when you think of how many different people and potential law infringements there are in every single play. This weekend it's Wayne Barnes, is that right?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So, as somebody, I think it was Rory O'Connor, pointed out during the week, there was a urinal with a picture of Wayne Barnes' head on it somewhere in New Zealand over the last couple of years. So, nobody really looking forward to having Wayne Barnes referee it this weekend. But what should we expect from him? What are the things that we know that he likes to look out for? And are we going to benefit, or are we going to be hindered by his performance this weekend, do you think?
I don't know. I think he is very particular and very good at the breakdown. I think Leinster's recent kind of experience with Wayne Barnes probably isn't a positive one in the Champions Cup final. But I think he's an excellent referee. I think he's a really good communicator. And I just think that there's big pressure on him this week, because I'm sure Ian Foster and his coaching staff would have sent in video clips of Ireland questioning certain things, looking for the infringements that they possibly made, and trying to put a bit of pressure on. There's a lot of talk here about, New Zealand not getting decisions last week. I said this year, I think it was Monday, I can't remember, Ger, but I think New Zealand had known but themselves to blame for about the breakdown infringements, the things they were pulled for at the breakdown by Jakob Piper, because that would have been highlighted by Ireland the week before, and there was clear examples of New Zealand players coming into breakdowns, tackling Irish players onto the ground by the legs, going right past the breakdown. You cannot clear past the breakdown and through to the other side and tackle a player who's standing on his feet and is not kind of part of that trying to challenge for the ball, if you know what I mean. And there was 3 last week. So they've got to figure that out themselves. If they do the same this week and Wayne Barnes penalises them, well, it shows that they haven't learned from that. But I think Wayne Barnes, he's an excellent referee, and I just think he has to be clear, calm, and not be swayed by the crowd or the intensity of the game or the ferocity of it. He needs help from his assistants and the TMO as well. And look, Ireland are a pretty disciplined team. I think New Zealand had issues in that second, obviously certain major issues, big talking points last week, and they've got to be just more disciplined, because if you bring that ferocity and fire, you've got to bring a controlled kind of fury as well, and make sure you're within the boundaries and the laws. But I don't think Wayne Barnes will be swayed by it. It's a big pressurised game. It's going to be a packed house in Wellington, and I just hope that he's calm and that the Irish players are controlled as well, because I think it could be pretty ferocious, the intensity, some of the hits, and discipline could be a big thing, because well, it always is, isn't it? But I mean, penalties, kickable penalties, stuff like that. He's a big job in his hand on Saturday night, but I think he's very capable of doing a good job.
Who's going to win, Alan?
I just said it, Ger. I think it's hard to look past New Zealand given Whitelock is back. I think Lolala at tight head, and the 2 in the back line, Will Jordan and Havili. But this team, I just think what they did last week was an incredibly impressive thing. It wasn't a fluke. I think, of course, they had opportunities when New Zealand were reduced to 13 to really kind of hammer it home and go 17 up, and maybe they missed some chances. I think they're going to have to take their chances again this week, and if they bring that continuity and pace and tempo to their game, they have a great chance. But ultimately, I think New Zealand probably will be a little bit strong for them.
Enjoy it, Alan.
Maybe win it in the end. Yeah. Cheers, sir.
Best of luck. It's Alan. You can hear his CoCom on Sky on Saturday morning. Game kicks off at 8:05, so make sure you have the alarm set for that one. Now, the football pod is on the road tonight for its second ever road show, this time live from Kilmacud Crokes GAA Club in Dublin, and it is completely sold out. Fear not, the show will be fully available for your ear and eyeballs over the weekend, but in the meantime, here's a clip from the latest episode of the pod as James, Paddy and Tommy talk about the big threat of Galway's Damien Comer heading into the Ireland final against Kerry next week.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The best rugby insight and analysis.
When you watch a guy, Ger, standing on the sideline counting players with his fingers, you know this is bullshit.
OTB Sports Rugby.
We talk about having to give Carbery and these players more time, but even if we give them more time, they're not going to hit the level that Johnny is hitting at and what he brings out of other players.
Subscribe to the Rugby Stream on the OTB Sports app now.
When they're inside in a meeting and they're going matchups, like I think that McCaig would have nearly been like, I'll take Comer. Like Comer is the
I was surprised
that who can get 2-2. Comer's the one who can get 2-2. Shane Walsh can get 4 or 5 from outside. Finnerty can get probably 2 or 3. But the only fellow with the realistic goal threat who's going to actually be the game winner is Comer. And I think they just got that.
I would have looked at McCluskey on Finnerty, just with the size and that sort of things. Possibly McCaig on Comer, but then Rodgers is going to struggle with Shane Walsh. But Shane Walsh is out the pitch, and that suits Rodgers being out the pitch. So look, I didn't have the matchup that way. 2 of them were nailed on.
The two main ones we said all year were Walsh and Comer. The 2 main ones were Walsh and Comer, and then it was kind of whoever you have left.
I was surprised.
That's why Finnerty was playing so well, kind of. But like Comer is he's nearly favoured for Player of the Year. Like he's an outstanding player. Like he got 2-2 from play.
Who's going to pick him up in the final? Foley. Or Tom
It'll be
Sullivan.
Foley, yeah. Tom Sullivan will be on Shane Walsh. Foley on Comer.
And like Foley on Comer, like Foley, I thought was very good yesterday again. Solid. He's in that system. He had a couple of big moments in the second half.
This is going to be a massive, massive test for Foley. Like,
Comer will ask the
similar.
questions in that defence that Conor O'Callaghan would have asked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's going to stay in. He'll be direct. He'll be an absolute handful, and he's a target.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's an All-Ireland hurling final goalkeeping extravaganza for you now. We're going to speak with David Herity in a few minutes, but I'm delighted to say Limerick legend Joe Quaid is with us now. Joe, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning, Joe. All good.
What's the level of excitement / fear / nerves like at the moment for you?
Look, it's fine at the moment. I suppose the fact that it's only a 2-week build-up, it's a bit strange in comparison to other years. But what people forget, Joe, is that I was part of that 45-year heartbreak and wait for an All-Ireland. So we won't take anyone for granted, believe me.
I was saying as well a little bit earlier on that 40,000 last year at the All-Ireland final, it was a little bit surreal. There was a good atmosphere, but the atmosphere will be absolutely feverish this week in comparison because it's going to be an outpouring. It's going to be a full stadium and there's so much on the line, and the game wasn't close last year as well, so you knew by half time that it was a victory. It'll be a little bit different and perhaps a bit more meaningful even this year.
Oh, believe me, Joe, every All-Ireland we win is meaningful, and I actually hope it turns out the exact same as last year. Believe me, I think once you hit the 50 mark, you become more cognizant of your heart health. And believe me, after being above there in 18 with the last couple of minutes, I would gladly take a repeat of last year's All-Ireland. Oh, I don't think it will happen, but yeah, I would gladly take it.
Fair enough. One of the things we did want to talk to you specifically about was David Herity's performance. You obviously know him very well. You managed him when he was hurling with Kildare. What kind of a character is he that has allowed him to go from that to this, where he was a key man in an All-Ireland semi-final that was right in the balance?
I don't think he's gone from that to this. He was always a talented hurler. I think he was just surplus to John Kiley's requirements in 2016. And to be fair, when I was with Kildare, we were allowed to bring in outside players. I didn't want to. I was against it. But our panel was fairly thin on the ground that year. And the players actually came to me and said, can you strengthen up the panel a bit? So I made inquiries. I found out David and his brother Michael were living in Kildare. So I rang him. He said he was surplus to John Kiley's requirements. And I said to him, look, why don't you come up? I said, and play with us. It'll keep your name out there, and maybe you might get back into the Limerick setup the following year. No, he was phenomenal for us. He just fitted in to the squad unbelievably well. And you know what? If anything, I suppose bringing a guy of that talent in, it upped the level of performance from the homegrown Kildare lads, because I know they're fierce, proud people up there, and they didn't want the Limerick lad coming in a train and giving them a skin, and so it helped on all fronts. Both himself, his brother Mikey, and John Mulhall coming in as well. Like, I think it was just the quality of players that we got in. Usually it would be players that would be kind of past their sell-by date, but to get a guy in that was young and was just off a Limerick senior panel was probably unusual, and I'd say he's probably the only one ever to play with another county and come back and win an All-Ireland again.
Well, I suppose when I was asking from that to this, like he had been deemed surplus, so obviously something happened that year that got his love back and kept him in and kept him interested and kept him doing the strength and conditioning work that you need to do if you are going to be able to rejoin this Limerick panel in particular.
Well, the one thing he did say when he was finished with us was that the training that we were doing above Kildare was practically the same as Limerick were doing. So that kept him fit, and it's the same for all second-tier counties, really, that the effort they put in is no different to the top-tier counties, regards training and pitch sessions and stuff like that. But look, he's very disciplined. I was absolutely thrilled for him the last day. Some days he comes on, he'll pitch in with a point, he might hit a wide or two with it, but by God was the radar on last week, and I'd love to claim full responsibility for him practicing above in Hawkfield in Newbridge. That was the reason why.
Why not? Sure, Joe, we may as well. It's all on a final build-up. Anything goes until afterwards. The performance of the team this year has been good but not great, and it looked like they were missing the influence of Keane Lynch. We're hearing rumours that perhaps he might be gone for the game at the weekend. They've managed this far without him, and yet it would have been amazing if they could have sprung him after not having him because of the hamstring injury up to the final, because it would have been a couple of weeks before the semi-final and a couple of weeks into the final, and who knows how much his eye would have been in. So what's your instinct about where the team is without Keane this weekend?
Well, they're in an all-Ireland final without Keane. Himself and Peter Casey, having them come on the last there was a huge boost. But I suppose, you go back, it was David Herity that stood up to the plate and got the 3 important scores. No, will he be a loss? Jesus, like, a Huller deer missing. He's got Huller deer twice. Any team would struggle to cope with that. But I think John Kiley and the lads have this kind of motto, and there's nobody bigger than the team. And if Keane can play, I'm sure his influence throughout the dressing room and out on the pitch will be felt. He's just a super guy. Apart from being just one of the most gifted hurlers that I've ever seen and worked with, he's just capable of doing anything, but he will bring something special to the day even if he can't play, just from his presence being around.
Okay, off the field you can definitely see how important it will be, like, and what a character he is. You know, there's an X factor to him. On the field, what difference would it make not being able to call on him, do you think?
Well, look, we've tried a few centre forwards there. One of the things was it would give Brian Cody a few headaches. Like, if you're sitting down and trying to plan for a final, and you have someone like Keane Lynch on the pitch at the moment, he doesn't know whether he will or he won't have him. Who picks him up? Who doesn't pick him up? Will he start? Won't he start? Like, the other side of it is, I suppose, the rest of the forwards, maybe Garrod Hegarty and Tom Morrissey, haven't hit the peaks that they have so far in the last few years. And I might possibly put that down to the fact that Keane Lynch isn't in there pulling the strings and orchestrating all the plays. No, to be fair, young Cathal O'Neill was thrown in at the deep end against Waterford when Keane came off. Like, for a young fella to go in, you'd say, okay, shove him in wing forward, shove one of the more experienced guys in centre forward. But I remember that night inside Limerick, he was looking for every puck out off Nicky Quaid. He wasn't afraid to shoot. You know, you have the option of putting Kyle Hayes in there. He won an All-Ireland in 18 at centre forward, that young hurler of the year there. So we're not short on replacements, but what we certainly don't have another team in the country is a wizard like Keane Lynch that can just unlock teams in the space of a couple of plays.
Yeah, so you've got to plan for something entirely different if you don't have him. The performance of Kyle Hayes down the stretch in the semi-final as well was absolutely sensational, and there's something magnificent about him in full flight. You know, we've seen him running onto the ball from deep. You know, you think of the Munster final last year against Tipperary in the second half, that incredible goal, but and then this year it looked like it was going to be a totally different year from in the full forward line, and then all of a sudden, as the season goes on, we're like, actually centre forward with him finding a little bit of space. It's a completely different challenge that he faces, or that he poses for Kilkenny. How do you think it'll match up if he does drop deep and start running onto the ball with Richie Reid's desire to kind of hold centre?
Well, that's the game plan they come up with, and they want Kyle dropping deep. I can guarantee one thing: there won't be any ball driven straight down the middle, down on top of Richie Reid. I suppose Limerick's game plan has been flood the middle area and work the ball through, deliver good quality ball into the inside forward line. I suppose Gillette was on fire the last day. I think 4 out of the other 6 forwards were taken off, and we still were able to get over the line. So I don't think anybody can really rest in their laurels. To me, there's a few lads that need to step up their performance and will want to step up their performance. They would have been disappointed. There's probably a lot of the markers that John and the lads have laid down that weren't hit in the semi-final. But I suppose, look, the last 2 All-Irelands, Limerick have saved their best performance of the year for the finals, which is great. So you'll be hoping that they've timed their run right again. Everyone was giving out about them in the league, but they're gone. But John and the lads timed their run to championship perfectly. I can't see why we would doubt them timing their run to the All-Ireland final perfectly as well.
Talk to me about Nicky's influence on the team. You know, you said there, for one thing for sure, he won't be banging ball down on Richie Reid. We know that for sure. His evolution as a goalkeeper has been a key turning point in the team. You know, like if you're going to play the game that Limerick want to play, you need somebody who is intensely accurate and very focused on accuracy from the puck out, and he is as good as there's ever been at that.
Absolutely. I suppose you've 2 of the best goalkeepers ever to play the game out on show on Sunday. Owen Murphy is probably the top shot stopper in the game, and Nicky is probably the best distributor of the ball in the game. Like how a goalkeeper in matches can find wing forwards, centre forwards, midfielders in 20, 30, 40 yards of space is just phenomenal. I don't know, in my day it was get it as far away as possible as you can, goals, but he's just become the conductor of the orchestra. And if you watch him when he's getting ready to take puck outs, he'll never hit one unless there's a purpose to it or it's going to a specific place. Sometimes balls go out over the line from his puck out. I wouldn't be too surprised if there was nothing on, and they do that on purpose so that they're down the field and they get the reset and force the oppositions to make a play. But he's just been phenomenal. It's actually sickening at times, John. He makes it look so bloody easy. It's just come so naturally to him. He's just such a laid-back character, and one thing as a goalkeeper, I suppose it's great to have is an inner self-confidence, and he has to have that. He's just been phenomenal. I suppose he hasn't really, in my opinion, and I'll be totally biased on this, got probably the individual accolades I think he deserved. I think the game has changed down through the years, and the main focus of the goalkeeper is not now shot stopping, which it was in my day. No, it's the whole package, and I don't think there's anybody challenge him on that front, to be honest.
What is it about his puck outs? What when he's in goals, and is it that there's so much practice done with the forwards who are making the runs? Is it that he's actually able to spot the shape of the run at just the right time to release, so that he knows that by the time the ball lands, the run that started as I was making my run as the goalkeeper to puck the ball out, that these two things in parallel are going to release somebody into space? How does that work?
I presume it's just repetitive at training. I remember talking to one of the players last year after the final, and I was just talking about Nicky Tim, and he said, if you point there, he said, for the ball, he said, you better be there because the ball will arrive. So I presume it's a massive understanding between them. But he's just so confident as well on shot puck outs. Like we've seen, I suppose, nearly more blunders in goals this year than I've ever seen in a championship, and it's something that you won't be able to see, I think, on Sunday with the two best keepers in the country there. But he's just so accurate. And he doesn't do panic. If you look back and you see your goalkeeper panicking, or if you see indecision, I think he makes a call when he has the ball in his hand. If you watch him, he's constantly looking up. He'll wait. If it's on quick, he'll get it out quick, and that's something Kilkenny will really have to watch, I think, because while Mikey Butler will probably be put on Gillette, to be honest, if you have 5 Mikey Butlers marking on Gillette and Limerick get a quick restart and get a long ball in front of Gillette is unmarkable, in my opinion. You put proper ball in front of him, he's unmarkable, because he hits the ball off his left, off his right, over his shoulder, and even if you're touch tight up his back, you can't get across to knock him down. So to me, Nicky's quick restarts are nearly as important as his long balls into space. Because if he gets the ball out in 2 or 3 seconds after it going wide or that, puts it into Barry Nash or one of the lads, Dermot Burns, that can just ping ball, they'll take half the Kilkenny team out of the equation, and then you're down on a 1-on-1 situation. And to be honest, I don't think there's anybody that can hold like of him on his day.
No.
And as was proven in the Munster final, if you do hold him to a couple of points, you have the likes of Seamus Flanagan, who was off the pace, I suppose, after a blistering start the last day. He popped in with 8 points the day of a Munster final. So then you have to look at Peter Casey, who possibly will start or come off the bench, who was in 9 for man of the match in last year's All-Ireland after only 20 minutes with 5 points.
I just to last bit about Nicky, we had Tommy Walsh in studio yesterday, and in fairness, in terms of giving credit, he remembered the All-Ireland semi-final against Cork, and I've just looked up the video to make sure I get this correct. It's 1:26 apiece. There's 72 minutes on the clock, 4 minutes of stoppage time being played, and the ball falls to Seamus Harnedy on the edge of the square, and he has it thrown up to tap it into the back of the net to win the game for Cork, to stop what was going on with Limerick, to stop the notion of them being one of the greatest teams of all time, to halt them in their tracks. And out of nowhere, Nicky comes flying and just knocks the ball away. Game goes to extra time, Limerick win the All-Ireland, and this whole thing starts. So I think everybody does understand that without him, this wouldn't exist.
Well, that wasn't even to stop us in our tracks, Joe, because we hadn't even got on the railroad yet. We were just making progress. I suppose we'd finished, I think, 3rd in Munster that year, from my recollection. We got to the semi-final, barely got over Kilkenny in a quarter-final. To be honest, if I think it was Robbie O'Flynn hit the ball in, if Robbie O'Flynn had put the ball over the bar that day, I think we were beaten. But that's Nicky's, I suppose, from years of playing out the field. Nicky's a hurler. I wouldn't call him a goalkeeper or an outfield player. Nicky is just a supreme, sublime, silky hurler with a great hand in him, great skill level, and the greatest part of all is his decision making. Like, he could have come out that day and thrown his body in front of it, which is probably what I would have done and got a belt of it. But he kept his eye on the ball all the time. He was watching it. Donald O'Grady from Cork, I don't know whether it was his bitterness or what was coming through. He said it wasn't a save, it was a flick. So if you're inside in goals and you prevent a goal, to me it's a save. And that was really probably the pivotal moment in this Limerick people's journey. It started there. Cork wasn't trying to knock us off the rails. As I said, we hadn't been even on the track, but that got us on the track. The All-Ireland kept us going down the line, and to be fair, it's a train that bar Kilkenny in 19, nobody has able to derail.
It's an unstoppable juggernaut now, and we'll see what happens at the weekend.
Well, I disagree with that, Ger. There's been many a good train and many a good ship that has sank, that said they were indestructible. So, look, we'll be going up with massive hope. I know I was watching Herity this morning, and he's probably going to come on now and tell Limerick are massive favourites and Kilkenny are the big underdogs and all that. So if you believe that, you'll believe anything. Kilkenny never go into a match thinking they're underdogs. No, the only worry I have, Joe, is I've always had, I'm not a betting man, but I always said if I was ever back against Kerry or in football or Kilkenny in Hurling and All Irelands. But I'm hoping that I'm wrong that one.
Well, we'll see. Joe, great spending some time with you this morning. Thanks a million. That was lovely. Cheers.
No bother. Thanks, Joe.
It's Joe Quaid there giving us some thoughts, and you know, he's right about the goalkeepers this weekend. Two all-time greats up against each other, and we will be talking with Herity in a few minutes' time as well. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. As part of Owen's trip to Limerick ahead of this Sunday's All-Ireland final, he met up with the former Limerick player and manager. It's a 90s nostalgia, 25 minutes here for you with Joe Quaid there and Tom Ryan, his manager from the 90s. Enjoy this.
Just some of the characters that you would have shared the sideline with, like the likes of Ger Loughnane, Liam Griffin, I guess Eamon Cregan at various points. Was there a mutual respect between you and those guys, or was there a natural rivalry that you had to have with your adversaries around that time?
Well, I never spoke to any of them, to be honest about it. We were coming from a very low base, and we looked at ourselves as to try and rectify our own camp and get our own team going, and that occupied me so well that so much that I wasn't the choice of the month for any interviews or any RT work or anything like that, or media work in general. We were considered kind of only we had Cregan had a huge. I hauled with Cregan, won a lot in '73, and hauled with him for 10 years with Limerick. I know Cregan well. And with our profile, Griffin had a big businessman away down the west, but I never spoke to Mr. Griffin. And Loughnane, Loughnane was Loughnane, Loughnane commanded the whole lot. He commanded the media and GA officialdom. Whereas we were kind of only out there, peddling our way to South Dakota. So we didn't bother.
Did you get on well with them at least?
Well, I never had any contact with them as such. Right. I didn't. We never had any sideline issues anyway. Right. Okay. Our record on the sideline is what I was blamed for, that I didn't run up and down the sideline and I didn't run in around the field. I was a man that took my place and on where I was allocated, and I always figured on that if you hadn't your work done like on the training pitch, well then you must business running in out of the field and argue with referees and all that. Never did that. That was something we never got credit for. Didn't know we wanted credit, but at the time everybody was up to quite recently. It's some of these individuals that you're on about now would spend more time in the field than they did like on the sideline. Yeah. So I had a different type of a regime that I operated and that we kept to. We didn't show any emotion, or we didn't show any excitement in the sideline. We left that and we did all our work. In 4 years of Limerick training, and I was a busy individual. I ran a big business in Limerick. I had 3 farms, and I had 150 men for the pay every Friday with no government backup and no subsidy or no IDA assistance. All top engineering and electrical, people. I never missed a training session with Limerick or a match. So that was my input into it. So I didn't concentrate much on the opposition at all. We tried to get ourselves out of the hole we were in, and we did it. And in spite of all the hassle and all the objections from our own, we had tremendous admiration. And at this stage, even I would say that the one man that I had great support from, and he's often been maligned and spoken about, but the one man that gave me huge support whenever I wanted it was Frank Murphy Cork.
Right. Why? How does a Cork official give a Limerick man support? How does that work?
Yes. Well, whenever we went to the game, and I played a lot of games because I tried an awful lot of players. I played 4 inter-county matches to try one player alone, and all I had to do was ring Frank Murphy, and he would have a team ready for me. Let it be in Fermoy, Páirc Uí Chaoimh, whatever, and they were there. And he treated us like royalty. Right. We had provided with all officials. He gave us plenty of food after each game, and he had a great, and we were actually knocking Cork out of the championship at this stage. Like.
Yeah.
But that is an input, that's an insight into that man that, really and truly, I mean, isn't too well known, I'd say, but I've always said that.
Did he ever try and get you over to take the Cork hurlers over?
No. That's an internal job with him. That's their religion down there. And I think it's one major flaw in their armoury.
Just to go back a little bit to what you said there, like you're kind of painting the picture there that you'd be somebody who's fairly anti-establishment, like in terms of like RT, in terms of the GEA, like that Loughnane maybe would be somebody you would have seen on television a bit more, maybe Liam Griffin as well. So with Griffin and Loughnane in particular, do you communicate with them at all after that period when you're not managing? Like if you met each other at the match at the weekend, would you have a conversation?
No, I never met him.
You've never met them full stop?
I never met Loughnane, I never met Griffin. Right. I told them they were darling boys of RT, and RT had their cliches and not their cliques, not cliches, but their cliques.
What do you mean by darling boys of RT specifically?
Well, I always looked on RT as hostile. Because to Limerick, yes, and the way I would judge that, and I would judge it, and very fairly, is that fairness is great. I mean, different opinions are very important, and I think that we never got a shakedown of a fair shakedown from RT.
What happened? Was there a particular incident or something?
Well, any incident that was created by themselves. I mean, we never created any incident. We never had any like. We never had any breakdown with them or any row them or anything like that. Everything in my area of Limerick and in general, as a player, as a manager, a coach, and I'm around the block, and whatever I am, I have good old judgment, and I know what people think, and I know that we never got a fair in the 4 years that I've been asked this question before. I know, like well, that, and might be tested anti this. And I'm not anti anything. I'm for progress. I'm for promotion, but fair. I'm for fairness as well. Mm-hmm. I like people to think outside the box, especially our national broadcaster, especially people that have the role to promote and are being well paid and well looked after to take the national, take our hurling people and treat them fairly across the board. You see, but RT have their favourites. They have their favourites in every area. I never got an interview from RT. We were never invited into the studio for any discussion, ever. Didn't that we wanted that, but we weren't asked anyway. So, I mean, I wouldn't cross the road for RT, because all they have is they have the same old story there every Sunday night there. 3 weeks ago, this guy came out and he said that he was under desperate pressure. He didn't know, he didn't enjoy the show anymore. Well, I mean, it's not an enjoyment, it isn't a kind of a comedy program at all. It is really a program, and if they want to analyse it and if they want to do it, like, I mean, they should be doing it, but they should have different voices. There's no way to challenge their ideology. And they actually have in their deliberations, both radio and television, they have total control and they have big influences. And to me, those influences are not for the good of hurling. They have promoted this kind of a bastardized game that was developed by a few individuals, and like they actually then now. They're back in action and they're quoting them onto the final as being one of the greatest games of all time. So like, I mean, they can make up their mind, and they actually they haven't a clue. But they have the same people in every night chanting out the same Ramesh with no one to challenge them. And I think myself that in the promotion of the game like that, the GA have left them with too much power.
Do you not think it's just a case of maybe different opinions on the show? That's why there's maybe that lack of consistency, that they're not necessarily there to promote one ideology of the game, that there are different views of how the game should be played tactically?
Correct. Exactly, Owen. You hit it there in one. There is no alternative view or opinion, or there is no challenge the gurus that are there, dressed up like tailors' dummies, every night, quoting the same thing and drawing maps and drawing arrows and drawing circles and all this rubbish. And like there's no one there to challenge them. And so therefore what's taken then that this is the way. They've invented a new system, like a new game. And now the new game that they have is falling apart.
Do they not have Davy Fitz in there this season, who would have like been at loggerheads with some people in RT in the past? Like they brought him in, and like I guess does he not challenge it from within? Do you think, or do you think he's like falling in line as well, or what's the?
Well, Davy Fitz is one of the people that invented this caper himself. Davy Fitz has his own TV program, has his own TV company, doing his own thing. I mean, he's been promoting himself, and fair play to him when he has the platform. I don't blame David Fitz at all. Yeah. I mean, David Fitz nearly the same Matthew. You know, I mean, this is the thing about it. There's plenty of people there with alternative views, but they're not. There's no way they can view those.
That's interesting. So you obviously think that there's like there's a comfort within certain establishments within the GAA that don't like to hear dissenting views. Like, is that the view and the feeling you get when you're out in the street? Say if you're in Limerick City now today, do you think that Tom Ryan is a well-liked man? Do you think that kind of view of you can't be saying that, or you stepped out of line, it actually prevails around the county for people who are old enough to remember the 90s, like, you know?
Well, I wouldn't be too worried about what people think of Tom Ryan, but the only way I can judge my position is the reaction to my articles every Saturday in the Mail. Yeah. You know, I get a huge reaction all over the country for that, from football counties up at Sligo, Mayo, down to Waterford, all over the country. Like it is the truth in the news. That people like what I say. People say it's coming from the heart, but I have a huge reaction to that, like from the public, and that's all. That's the way I can judge it. The media, and I mean all the media, I mean including your own, didn't have given an opportunity to me for to give my own, for to give my views. This is the first time now that I've heard from your program, like in a long time, and I must say that you should be doing it right, but at least, like, I mean, it would be, I can judge what happens, and nothing goes over my head. I'm watching everything, and you know, I'm saying like that. I'm not saying I'm right, but I know that I represent the views of an awful lot of people, and you know, and that view is not being heard in Croke Park. I was never asked to Croke Park to join any committee, never in my life. So, I mean, I talk about being a leper, like in a leper colony. I mean, I don't know what I did to people. Maybe people don't like me. I don't mind that. But at least, I mean, they might take my opinion on board, or maybe at least give me the opportunity to give my opinion, like. And because I could stand up to any debate. I'm not a shrinking violet. I can assure you that in any walk of life. I've been involved in politics all my life, and that's a good learning. That's a good learning at school. So, like, I mean, what really, I'm not saying I'm right or anything like that. I'm not a dictator or anything like that. But I know that there is no challenge being allowed by the media because it doesn't suit the status quo.
So if RTE phoned you up and said get on the three-piece suit there for Sunday, come into the Sunday game studio and analyse the All-Ireland, would you turn them down?
No, I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go because I've passed out that. Yeah. I passed out RTE. You know, I was never a fan, but we didn't get fair treatment of their success, of all their down the line. But I told them that. I mean, I've told that. You know, I've refused interviews with RTE before. I mean, serious interviews, and okay, but they have the power to turn off the switch, and then you don't get that reason.
Is there one moment, Tom, that kind of like still rankles with you a little bit, like when you talk about this? Like, is there a moment of analysis that you come back to that still winds you up or something?
No, it's not. It's general one. You know, it's policy. Like it's their policy from the word go. And I'm not saying that I should be this or I should be that. No way. But I know that at the level I was at and the level that we had a team, we weren't treated fairly by RTE, who are the major promoters of the media aspect of things. They were never. I mean, when I hear of players now not being silenced and being told that you can't talk to the media, I mean, I actually promote the media. I want people to hear the players. Never, ever. Talk about naming teams. Every team I ever picked, we named our team at Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Tuesday night before a Sunday game, and we never put out a dummy team. We never thought a lad he was playing and he wasn't playing. He went straight into the media at Tuesday night. No hiding, no ducking or diving, no tricks, no gimmicks. Everything was above board, and that's the way I operate. Like I don't in actual fact think that there's any advantage in this nonsense that has been built up that you can prevent players that have been murdered training 40 hours a week just for the sort of manager. They've got too much power, and now they have a team behind them, maybe 25 or 30 maybe. Behind them, tell them what to do. The ministers above the cabinet haven't as many advisors as the managers have now. Until now, we're looking at rubbish hurling. We had one game to revive the whole season, and hopefully we'll have another one next Sunday, which I think we will. But there's an awful lot of nonsense attached to the whole thing. But it's not being called out, you see. Because why? Fear. They're not talking. People won't even say, if you go to Limerick and you say we can't interview the players, why not? These players where's the GPA and all this? So these players they're not robots. They're the people that are performing. They're the people not being paid.
By and large, then, it's a good point. Like the media, it's like the last week, because we were having this conversation around the All Ireland football semi-finals, and Kerry and Dublin not doing any media before the semi-finals was pretty extraordinary. The game maybe not being promoted to the best of its ability. Just on that point that you made there, that like the Munster hurling final is the game that was kind of lauded as one that kind of saved the season. Are you a fan of modern hurling then, by and large?
Well, you see, I don't recognise the term modern hurling. Harry McCarthy is president of the GA, and he made a big speech about Croke Park after one of the finals in the club competition. I think it was the junior final or the intermediate final. He said we had a great game of traditional hurling. No, I didn't know that we had two games. That we had traditional hurling and we had modern hurling. I taught hurling with paper hurling ball, and that the field was the same. And although they were talking about not to put extra lines into the field, all right, like they won it recently. But I wrote about that. I said, this is the game. You see, all these gimmicks, like they were brought in. You see, with the playing the sweeper and playing through the lines and all this nonsense, all that, and you see. All this thing has been brought in by clever people, that have been highly paid, and I have no problem with innovation whatsoever, none, never. But the point about it is, when it becomes the establishment, then I have a query in it, then I have a question, and I ask the questions, but no one wants to hear them. No one wants the people that have invented this game have this. All these, what you call, I think one time Cyril Farrell said that David Fitz had 5 different systems. Well, the way he left Wexford, that they didn't know what system they were playing, and still don't. So Watford, you could say the same thing. Hurling is hurling, and let's hope that we see that next Sunday, and I think we will. I think we will now. I'm looking forward to this, because I said we started the Munster final, man to man, physicality. You take on and you win your own ball. There's nothing complicated about it. But you see, what happened was a few bright boys. I have no problem, as I said, with innovation at all on whatsoever. And if it works, then you see we've all to go at it in. No one will say, so we counteract that, no bother. We say, no, you have to join the queue, and if we don't, then you consider the dinosaur. You haven't the system, you see. And if we haven't the system, then people don't want you. Counties like a tune up now for David Fitz and all that, although a few of them have changed their mind about him recently. But I have great admiration for Davy. He's a wonderful, great businessman and a great character. and a good coach as well. I have no problem however Hurling, and I admire him and like him, and I know him well, and I wish him well. But Davy, Davy, about this, you see, he has made a business out of this, and fair play to him. You know?
Tom Ryan there in conversation with our own Owen Sheehan, that's interesting insight into the workings of Tom and his views on hurling. Right, news breaking this morning: Colin Bonner has been relieved of his position as the manager of the Tipperary Hurlers. To talk about the Kilkenny side of the All-Ireland final, David Herity joins us now. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Great, and yourself, Ger? How are you?
Good. That news just breaking this morning about Colin Bonner. It's not really that much of a surprise in the end, is it?
I think it has to be, no matter what. Like, if a manager's only getting 1 year at the moment, obviously we're talking about Brian in 24 years there, and obviously John Kiley, and he's 5 years. Jesus, 1 year as a manager, that's fairly brave. County board to do that, to give him the time, especially with the amount of injuries Tipperary had this year. I don't know. Now, obviously, Tommy Dunn leaving yesterday, Declan Curran has just completely pulled the rug on that whole management there. Once that happens, then, yeah, that's curtains pretty much for the manager. I still am very surprised considering the amount of injuries they had this year. They all went with Colin Bonner. They interviewed last year. Well, I didn't notice Willie come back into the reckoning job as well. So obviously put all their eggs in Colin Bonner. They went after Colin Bonner last year, and then to relieve him after a year is it's tough going on him.
It definitely is tough going on him, and maybe actually you're right. It felt like it had kind of petered out at the end, and that I don't know, maybe we'll see what happens. Plenty time in the off season to talk about that. From the Kilkenny side of things, David, we talked to you 2 weeks ago. In the intervening period, how do you feel that the Kilkenny side matches up with this Limerick team at the moment?
Physically, if you're going down tactically and physically, they're probably the two areas that you would say. If we were talking 2 weeks ago, I felt that we're far superior, even before, say, the Clare game. Now, having said that, physically, again, you saw the Munster final. After the Munster final, the lads celebrating, and they all have their tops off, and they look like the South African team from before the World Cup 4 years ago. They're absolute beasts of men. The only thing is the Kilkenny team, a different type of physicality. They wouldn't be hitting probably the same in weights, but there's the toughness that's borne out in 15v15 games in Kilkenny is different. Like the ball is thrown in, the whistle is swallowed, and you just get on with it. And that level of toughness against the Limerick physicality, I think that's what makes it as exciting as it is on Sunday. I think Kilkenny will be well able to match that physicality. They did it in 2019. I think every team, if you ask anyone in the county or in the country who can match them, I think a lot of people say Galway because maybe of their physical size. Kilkenny, if you look at TJ Reid, even just say, if you look back to Mikey Butler there, someone who's very small in stature, a bit like a Tommy Welch when he was back playing, like these lads are as tough as nails. Richie Owen, all lad there, who could see game time on Sunday. Physically, they're extremely imposing lads. So I think Kilkenny will be able to match up for that. The thing tactically, Kilkenny have finally embraced, and Brian has as well, the short game and the long game. Now, the only big thing, and that's why Clare couldn't handle Kilkenny in the semi-final. The only small bit of a worry is the fact that against Wexford, when I suppose the shit was hitting, and Kenny went back to the long ball. Against Galway up in Salt Hill, Kenny went back to the long ball. If they fight, they had Clare, they were always had Clare at their arm's length, so they were able to play, they were able to match, they were able to hit the ball, hit the long ball. Obviously, now on Sunday, if Limerick get on top, are they going to route one again? The 2019 against Tipperary, when they keep, even though Tipperary had called back there spare, are they going to do that, or have they finally evolved now into a team that's able to play to a system and keep it going for the 75 odd minutes?
Tommy Walsh called it heads up hurling. That's what they're doing now, as opposed to it just being playing through the lines or just the long ball. It's like whatever the right option is, take the right option. Don't just do something that's pre-programmed. Has it literally happened this year? Is that what's happened, that like a team can get this into them? Potentially because at club level many of them are doing this, and the skill set of the Kilkenny players is so high that it is possible that you don't need 5 or 6 years of conditioning to go, right, now we're a running team, now we're a short passing team. It's like, actually, we can do a little bit of everything here if we're just a bit clever about it.
Yeah, no, it's not a new thing. In 2014, we lost to Dublin in a league match up in Parnell Park. And we were brought in then to a room. We were training Carlo IT at the time, and this was kind of introduced, that this is what we would do. Because I remember after in that Dublin match, I caught a ball and drove it like you do every single other time. And James McGarry had said to me, no, you should have picked out someone. And that to me was the start of it then. Because Clare had done it in 2013, they saw that probably keeping onto the ball a little bit more rather than just driving the ball. This is what should come in. Now, I don't know where this is the thing that, like, obviously Kilkenny will do that for a certain length of time, but then, like I said, when they go behind, it's Route 1 stuff, and that's it. And it goes back to that. Now they've consistently are doing it, but then again, you have to have I think Kilkenny now know that they have to do it. They don't have those tall forwards like they used to have. Even the likes of Richie Power with sublime skill will catch it anywhere, or the likes of Gert or Eddie Brennan or Jesus Henry. The names are endless there. They now have to adapt. The likes of Owen Cody is not as big as some of these lads. Adrian Mullen is brilliant at finding little pockets of space. I actually think the new lads that have come through, the Owen Cody's, Adrian Mullins there, obviously Pádraig Welch back up in the forwards there as well. They're just super intelligent lads that are able to find pockets of space, and they're able to get their heads up. And they again, then you have a look at the backs. You've Paddy Deegan, Hugh Lawler, they're baiting out past their men. They're looking. Mikey Carey, phenomenal fitness levels again, that he's able to go give a ball and support again. So Kilkenny have adapted because of the players now that are now available with the age group that they have. The players have been able to do it as well. But you also you change up again the management team as well. You've Conor Phelan in there, who has a huge amount of experience, obviously, between WIT and the different teams that he's been with, Mount Leinster Rangers the last few years. He's in there coaching them as well. So he'll have brought his own different style. I'm sure Brian has obviously asked him in, so he'll have to embrace what Conor's ideas are as well in training.
What do you think is going to happen when you've been thinking about this game for the last couple of weeks? How does it unfold in your head?
Kilkenny have to get off to a good start. I know even Limerick got off to a smashing start there, 6-1. They have to keep Limerick at arm's length, like they did in 2019 when they were 1-8 to 3 points up. They have to keep them away. I feel that if Limerick are 6 points up at half time, this is game over. Then the panic sets in, it's back to the Route 1 hurl, and we might see that. I think they have to stay on top. They have to get 2 goals up like they did against Clare. Again, scored 16 goals this year. Limerick have only scored 7. I just don't think it's in Limerick's capacity. The muscle memory, I don't think Limerick have it. I think the Kilkenny lads can get goals. Limerick on Owen Murphy, I just don't see it happening. If they do, it's game over for Kilkenny. They can't be a straight point shootout. I think Kilkenny just have to physically match them. I think they have to push up and grow at Hegarty and Morrissey. I think Richie Reid is going to sit back on the edge of the D and try and cut out that ball to Flanagan and to Gillane and to Casey. Now, if he sits back, that's why it's vital if Keane Lynch is not playing. If he's not playing, that means, and Kyle Hayes is there, then Conor Brown can kind of split that role between Richie. Whereas if Keane Lynch is playing, well, then they need a full-time man marker on him. He'll just do too much damage. Adrian Mullen will come out to midfield. Will O'Donoghue, he'll pick up that area. I don't think he's going to pick up Will O'Donoghue. He's just going to pick up that area. I think TJ Reid is going to come out, and it's going to be a kind of a pass over there between Barry Nash and Morrissey, who's going to take him up. But I think I would like to see them pushing up on that half-back line like they did in 2019. I'd like them to push up and give them absolutely no space there whatsoever. I think we knew of someone like Owen Murphy who plays naturally outfield. He's a natural sweeper there. I don't think you need Richie Reid sitting back, but just the type of player that Richie Reid is and the possessions that he was on the last day, 24, I don't think Kilkenny will change their game plan starting off. I think he'll sit back. I said if Keane Lynch is playing, I think the game it really hangs on whether he is playing or not.
That's the thing. Talking to some Limerick supporters this week, they were like, it's grand. We've reached this final essentially without him this year, but it is different. And a fully fit Keane Lynch, I don't know how fully fit he would have been anyway, but anyway fit and getting into the game and playing his way into the game over 45, 50 minutes would have been a massive boost to Limerick, who, let's face it, aren't at their imperious best at the moment. If you think back to last year in the second half of the Munster final against Tipperary, an all-time great display. Maybe they were allowed to do that. The first half of the All-Ireland final last year, an all-time great display. They haven't hit those heights just yet.
No, I think the Limerick team is very much like the Kilkenny team of 08, 09, 08, a bit like last year with Limerick. They demolished everyone. They have nearly a team of all-stars there. This year they're just doing enough, and I see the match being like a cracker, a bit like 09 there, where Tip had their chances. Peter Ryan was the man of the match. They just didn't take them, and Kilkenny pipped them on the home straight. I can see it as close a contest as that. They're not. Obviously, I think the two pivotal players for Limerick are Declan Hannon and Keane Lynch. In 2019, Declan Hannon went off with concussion. A lot of people kind of forget that's the reason why I think Limerick lost that day. The fact that he was knocked out of the equation. He's the heartbeat, but Keane Lynch is the brains up there in front, and they haven't been motoring as well as they are because he brings in everyone else. He's not just scoring himself. He's setting up an abundance of scores then for runners off. Barry Nash coming out, Keane Lynch is there, a quick ball to him. He's laying it off then to Kyle Hayes or Gerard Hegarty or whoever it is, Donoghue there, midfielder, laying that ball in then to Gillette. He's the kind of stopping point there before in that whole area. If he's missing it, it's massive for Kilkenny.
The evolution of the style of play and the development of those young players that we've talked about is it's a very compelling argument that this is actually a new Kilkenny team that we're seeing, and that actually this is a team who is developing and evolving into a team that over the next couple of years should be able to go toe-to-toe with this Limerick team. Is that what we're witnessing here? Is this the birth of a truly great rivalry?
I think it can. I think that TJ Reid is going to stay on for another year. I think it'd be foolish not to. He's only 29 points off Pat Horgan there when it comes to the scoring records, and I think he's only 2 off Brick Welsh. So I think TJ will stay on next year. I think he's key to everything. The thing what people don't realise about TJ is he's not like any other player I've ever seen or ever played with or trained with ever in my life. There's no other person that would be out on a pitch before a training session commentating himself hitting balls over the bar. TJ Reid has the ball and TJ Reid sticks it over the bar and everyone's kind of looking at him and just laughing, but that's just the way he is. I remember in 11 before semi-final, I was in the gym. A few of us went to the gym the day before and you might do a bit of stretching, but TJ's picking up a weight over there. He's doing a few chin-ups there. He's just a little pick and mix of absolutely everything. You could do a few squats. And I remember just saying to him, kind of going, would you not want to be taking it easy for the match tomorrow, TJ? And he goes, TJ, man the match tomorrow. And that was it. That was in his head. That's the way he believes. He doesn't get nervous. He actually ended up getting a yellow card and taken off at half time, but that wouldn't have played the likes of TJ. He's like he lacks what every other normal player would have of that nervousness. But he steps up to the free. There's a reason why he's got 19 out of the last 20 frees. Like at the end of the game, if you had any person in the history of the game that could step up to 21, it would be TJ. I just don't think he gets nerves. It's like he still plays like a child out on the pitch. Even to see him celebrating after the semi-final, he's there fist pumping to himself for about a minute after the game when the camera was on him. No one else around, but just happy out. And I think even the fact that his brother, I know it did hurt him, the fact that he had he's been captain twice and hasn't got a chance to go up in the lift the Liam McCarthy. The fact that his brother is there, he has a chance. I think he's going to be. I think he's pivotal to the whole thing. I think he's pivotal to Kilkenny over that Brian Cody, no matter what happens at the end of this year, that he keeps on to TJ, make sure that he's nailed down TJ for next year, along with the likes of Owen Murphy.
We were speculating in the office, is this the time, if they win, is this the time when Cody goes? And I was like, I don't think so. I can't imagine him walking away from a winning team. Because it's a winning team, there's a good chance they might win again.
And that's it. He said to us, again, back in the dressing room, he couldn't get over. And he mentioned Willie O'Connor. He goes, I don't get players who they win and they walk away. Why would you walk away? He kind of nearly, Willie O'Connor was captain in 2000 and then stepped away from the panel. And I don't know, does he see it as, Jesus, I should have mentioned Willie O'Connor with the next word I'm going to say, but I don't know, does he see it as the coward's way of kind of walking off, into the kind of sunset? Why not? Why not stay around and battle right to the end until you can't give any more in the jersey? That's the way he is, and I expect that he wouldn't walk away. I think the funny thing is everyone now wants to stay on because obviously Henry was the most natural successor to him, but now Henry's up in Galway. Henry's not going to leave after a year, so people probably want him around for the next 3 years, or otherwise what happens? Who fills in there for the next 3 years? Is it Derek Ling? If it is Derek Ling there and he's around for the next 2 or 3 years, that means you're kicking Shefflin away from the job for the next 3 years. So it's I think it's like I said the last time I was on with you, it's gone full circle. I think people want him to stay on now. It all depends. I really do think that the only way people get pissed off in the final is the fact that if we go back to the usual long ball, if we start playing the hurling that we did against Clare all the way through and stay true to this goal, varying it up between short ball and long ball and try and take this on, go toe to toe with Limerick, the way that they can, I think people will be happy enough, and Brian will be happy enough to stay on. There's no way he's walking away from this. To go back to what? You know, he had his birthday there the other day. He's 68 years young at this stage, but I don't see why he would even contemplate. He's retired from teaching. He has every day, all day to concentrate on hurling. There's no way he's going to step away with a chance of a team winning in Ireland next year. I think this could give him a whole new lease of life. He could be around for the next decade after this.
Yeah, if they win, for sure. Can I just the start of the second half between Limerick and Galway, a ball gets rained down in on the Limerick full back line, it's caught and it's flashed into the back of the net, and it's game on, right? And the stadium erupts and everybody's like, ooh, something's on here. And ultimately Galway don't see it out, fair enough. Limerick get a few points from the bench and that's enough to see them through. But for the rest of that match, more long balls rained in on the full back line, and actually Limerick came out with them. So if you're analysing that as a manager, do you think, well, that worked once and that was enough and that got everybody up and that gave us a swing and it gave us confidence? Or do you think, actually, on balance, we got 3 points off that from that goal, but actually there are 5 other balls that go in, and for the last 25 minutes it's kind of a bit soul destroying that the Limerick full back line are coming out with it? How do you coldly analyse what Galway did with the long ball to the Limerick full back line in that second half?
To vary it up, you have to vary it up the way things are going in the second half. You have to read it as a manager. If you're getting a few long balls in, and a bit like Kenny did hit long balls in against Clare, and they got the Mossy Cohn goal off it in the first half, you hit it in. But then if you see, okay, they're mopping up the ball, you need to play it through the lines again. You need to go back to that. You need to have a team that's doing this so often that, like, you know, it's Henry's first year with Galway. There is a small bit of panic though at the end of the matches. You see it as well, that teams go 2 points behind, the next thing they go for a goal, and you're nearly pulling your hair out on the sideline going, Jesus, keep it tipping over. There's still another 5 minutes. Like, obviously teams will have noticed now at this stage that every game is not 70 minutes anymore. It's 75, 76 minutes. So when you see 69, there is a time when players tend to kind of panic because the game is nearly over and they start going for goals here, let's lob the ball in. But if that can head a bit of experience, this is what, you know, you can't beat the experience that Limerick have, that they've won so much. They're 15 games unbeaten now at the moment. I just think they've enough to see it out. I think being up by a point or two against the Kilkenny team coming down the home straight, though, I think that's different, though. I just think Kilkenny would love that. He saw it again against Cork there last year. Like, 3 points is not enough, even if you're in the 76th minute. Adrian Money gets a goal. They need to be far enough out. But again, you have to get onto the team. And the other reason, actually, I think why Limerick mightn't be as impressive this year, they're still a phenomenal team. And chances are, if they win on Sunday, they go down as one of the greatest teams, one of the greats up there with the 3 in a row teams and 4 in a row. But I don't think the water break has hampered them hugely this year, where Connacht is now coming on every 17 and a half minutes and showing them, here's the new tactics. Here, this is what we're doing for the next 17 minutes there. And then we have him at halftime. He's not getting a chance to talk to him at 3 times in a game, which is phenomenal when you have the brains that he has and the players that have that they're together now 5 years. It's amazing. But the fact that that's now taken out and they've only one chance to talk to him at halftime, I think that's another reason why they're just not dominating as much as they have other years.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Are you talking yourself into a Kilkenny win? Is that what you feel like you're doing, or is that cold rational analysis going, this is very close to a 50-50 game, and if the breaks go Kilkenny's way, they're going to win?
Yeah, no, it is. I do think it is a 50-50 game. I think when you have a player like TJ Reid, like I said, that he can do absolutely anything on a day, and he'll fully believe that he can win the game. When you have Owen Murphy in goal, that is, you know, he pulls off the saves that he does and controls the backs the way he does. You know, you need an exceptional goalie, exceptional free taker. Kilkenny have that. They also have that bit of toughness. They do not fear Limerick. They would have beaten the minor in 14. You know, in 17 they lost them under 20, but then they beat him in 17. Limerick won in 18. Kilkenny won in 19. You know, there's a rivalry there with this bunch of players there on both sets, and Kilkenny have matched them every single time. There's nothing between the teams. Even when they bet them in 18, it was only by a point or two in the end, and Kilkenny were still a little bit bitter that they could have got a few frees that day near the end of the game. So yeah, I would never ever back against the Kilkenny team. Not a chance in hell. And I think if they get those couple of goals on Sunday, I think it can be their day. Yeah.
Enjoy the game, David. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks, Ger.
It's great stuff as ever from David Herity, of course, former Kilkenny goalkeeper, Kildare manager, and always just great to listen to him. Reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Loads of comments coming through. Joe LK20 says Cody can change tactics in-game. That's the key to Kilkenny's success. Patrick Carter says Kilkenny and Limerick haven't met in Championship Hurling since the game in 2019, so I'm really excited to see how this game pans out. And he says he also agrees with David that there's a lot of similarity between Limerick now and the Kilkenny team back in 06 to 09. I think this could be Cody's final year, he says, so I wouldn't mind seeing him win one more and retire on top. I just think, that's incredible insight from the dressing room. It's like, why are lads retiring? Well, after you've won, it doesn't make any sense. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you today at 1 o'clock. OTB Gold is Lance Armstrong. Leaders questions from 3. Our retro panel is Sport and the 1916 Rising at 4 o'clock. And OTB Gold at 6 is Barry Ryan, The Ascent. And then Nathan Murphy's in the big chair from 7 o'clock tonight. You can follow Off the Ball across all of our social channels. You really should subscribe to our YouTube channel. And actually, you can listen to OTB Sports Radio. If you want to listen to this show as a radio show, then you can get it on the OTB Sports app. After the break, we're turning our attention back to the rugby ahead of the final test with rugby journalist Rory Keane. First, here's the lads on the show last night debating whether Ireland winning this series in New Zealand will be Johnny Sexton's greatest achievement. Take a look.
So would you rest Johnny Sexton?
But when are you going to try someone else out otherwise? He's like, what is he, 37?
But try out for what, though? Because this will be Johnny Sexton. If Johnny Sexton leads Ireland to winning a Test series in New Zealand, I think it's unlikely we win the World Cup next year. But it won't affect us.
I have a question for you now.
But this will be Johnny Sexton's greatest achievement as a rugby player. Why would you drop him for it?
This might be his greatest achievement.
Nonsense. That's insulting.
What's his greatest achievement?
What? Not insulting.
4 European Cups.
But this is
Grand Slams. You're just diminishing the Six Nations now.
I know. Yeah. I think I think winning a series in New Zealand
away from home,
I think it's bigger than a Six Nations.
He didn't play in the first test.
Well, we lost it by 40 points or something.
Exactly.
So that's
like, how could potentially one game and whatever happens in the second game be considered his greatest rugby achievement? That to me is mad.
So he came in with 1-0 down and
lads.
Hang on, what's the bigger one?
4 European Cups. The European Cup.
The club rugby isn't in the same.
Grand Slams.
I think it trumps a Grand Slam.
I think that's nonsense.
But hang on, so you beat England, you beat France,
Wales, Scotland.
I tell you, Rog won a Grand Slam, Jack Kyle won a Grand Slam. None of them have done this.
Do you know, like, okay, you beat Scotland, you beat Italy, you get a win over Wales, England and France, good wins.
Yeah.
Winning 2 on the bounce against New Zealand in New Zealand. Beats beating England.
I think you're taking out the no, I don't think so, because I don't think, first of all, as a start, I don't think I don't know this, but the circumstances of them beating us won't mean the same to them as us beating them. It's circumstantial, but beating Ireland at home doesn't. Winning the series wouldn't have made a difference.
Handily, fair enough.
Winning the series because Ireland's nothing to them.
Oh, sorry, for them it's an afterthought.
Yeah,
but not. Since,
I know if they lose the circumstances. Yeah, it does.
They are not allowed to lose it.
Not since Ireland started beating them. Like, they would have now viewed Ireland as very genuine opponents, and now it's 1-1. So now it's a big deal.
I think I couldn't believe that it would be the best thing.
Well, you see, he's played brilliantly. Like O'Gara even said on Sunday on the show that he played as well on Saturday as he's ever seen Sexton play. So he's not like, he's pitched up and done it with the Lions, and now he's pitching up and he's leading Ireland to a series win. Yeah. But that would be his greatest hour, his finest hour.
I would, I don't know. I don't think, it's not this he's hanging around for.
But you can't compare, like, beating Ulster, beating Ulster in 2012, like, by 1 million points. Like, obviously Northampton was amazing, but Northampton versus New Zealand, like, come on.
But like the drop against France, that
might be his moment.
You know, the greatest moment that was.
That's greatest.
But beating France is
not a trophy. Like, what else are you there for? Like, come on.
There's bound to be a trophy.
I was going to say, surely there's a Millennium, Quidditch Cup or something like that.
I find that hard to believe.
Do you not think so?
I can't.
I honestly think this is like one of his crowning moments in his CV. Captaining and also bossing on the pitch Ireland to a series win in New Zealand. Come on. What do you want from the man?
I have a horrible feeling a lot of this stuff is going to be played back to us next week. We are assuming Ireland are going to beat New Zealand. We've done it once.
When they lose by inclusion.
They had a red card in the middle of the first half.
Let's just say for the record, New Zealand are favourites. New Zealand are favourites. If there was a gun to our heads, we would tip New Zealand to win. Let's put that on the record so we can't be destroyed in.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue.
I heard through the grapevine that Paddy Andrews was happy enough that Sean O'Shea had put the ball in the net.
Was? He did. He goes, leave him kick that. Leave him.
100%. I admit that. I was thinking, not within the conditions, the time of the game, he's nearly 60 metres out. And I'm just thinking that he's not kicking that. But there's the little bit you're going, he might.
Subscribe to the Football Pod on the OTB Sports app now.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, 19 minutes past 9 this morning, this Thursday morning. We've talked about the All-Ireland Hurling final. We haven't talked that much about the Open. We'll obviously do a lot more about that on the show tonight with Nathan and, of course, on tomorrow's show. But we're going back to Ireland against New Zealand now, and I'm delighted to say Rory Keane, Irish Mail rugby correspondent, is with us. Rory, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Oh, very good. Sure.
The lads there having a debate about how a series win would look on Sexton's CV. It's right up there. The point is that, like, whatever side of that debate you're on, you can't deny that pulling this off would be a seismic moment for Irish rugby, and all of the pre-tests and pre-tour conversation about blooding players has kind of taken a backseat because the series has taken on a life of its own, which is what you want. You want it to have some grander meaning, and as a result, we're now looking at this going, we might be able to win this thing. You've been looking at some of the key battles that might swing it either way, and before we get into the nuances of the 5 key battles, having looked at those key battles, what's your instinct about what's going to happen this weekend, Rory?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it. Like, they're kind of in bonus territory, Ireland, really, because like they have that win in the bag, historic Clark win on Kiwi soil, and go into a series. I mean, you know, it's 2-2 in the series. Even if they lost at the weekend, if you'd asked Farrell at the start before the series, if you asked him in Abbottstown when he had that pre-training camp last month, if he said you'd leave New Zealand 3-2 in arrears, but you'd have Aiden win, you'd have a couple of young lads, you'd have a couple of bolters putting their hands up, guys like Frawley and Treadwell, I think you would have bitten your hand off. So I'd imagine their camp is fierce for that. And you look at the psychological element of what's happening with New Zealand, the pressure they're under now, the pressure Foster's under, the pressure Kane's under, you know, first ever win, first ever loss to Ireland at home soil. I was reading their worst home defeat in 29 years. First time they will, like, but then conversely, they're going to come out firing. They've picked probably the most settled, most balanced team of the series. You know, I just think back to Ireland have beaten them and the backlash that came. You think back to 2016 Soldier Field, what happened in Dublin 2 weeks later. You think back to the 2019 World Cup. It's just going to be a massive reaction from them, to just emotionally, physically, tactically. So it's a hard one. Ireland are going to go up a level, but New Zealand are going to go up a couple of gears as well.
We're just having a little trouble with your line. There's just a few groundlings, Rory, so we'll call you right back. If anybody missed it, the team was named overnight, and the Ireland team is largely as expected. Bundy Aki comes in and will start with 12 on his back, and as a result of that, Keith Earls is on the bench. That's obviously all because Gary Ringrose is out, having been concussed in the previous game. But the settled team that Rory is talking about is Brodie Retallick and Samuel Whitelock at 4 and 5, which means that Scott Barrett goes back to 6, and the accusation of the imbalanced back row that they picked last week, well, that's all finished now, because they have Scott Barrett, Sam Cane and Artie Savea. Obviously, I talked about this a little bit earlier on, but we did the analysis piece with Derek McNamara, and he was pointing out that in the first game, Retallick and Whitelock were two of the highest achievers, as was Artie Savea. And then all of a sudden that was unavailable to them after the cards and the concussion in the previous game, or the head injury. So it's a very different New Zealand team that will take the field this weekend, a different New Zealand pack, and if they all play the full 80 minutes, then things should change as well. And then the other thing, of course, that's happened is that Will Jordan has come into the team, as well as David Havili. I don't know that much about David Havili, but earlier on Alan Quinlan was telling us that his form in Super Rugby has been sensational. But we all saw Will Jordan in Dublin, and that guy's pretty good at rugby. The Christian Cullen comparison a little bit earlier on was made. So it's a much better New Zealand team. And to go back again to the first piece that we did in this series with Gregor Paul, he was like, traditionally the third game is when you'll see New Zealand peak in a 3-test series. So notwithstanding that, they are the favourites for it, and there will be a great opportunity for Ireland to make rugby history, but they will definitely find themselves up against it. We're talking about Rory Keane of the Irish Mail. I think Rory is back on the line and can hear us. Yeah, Rory, you can hear us all right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, sure.
Yeah, we can hear you fine too now.
Yeah, right.
So look, you were saying it's bonus territory. I actually think, in a weird way, that the character of this coaching ticket is such that they're not looking at qualifying for a World Cup semi-final anymore. They want to make a final. That they've stopped having those kind of, it'll be good if we can do this thing. I think Sexton, similarly, this week wouldn't bite your hand off now for anything other than a victory this weekend.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that. I'm not down New Zealand, unfortunately, but the thing I found really interesting after the win in Dunedin last weekend was after the final whistle was just how relaxed everyone seemed. There didn't seem to be any, there was no hooping and hollering, there was no lap of honour, there was no kind of high fives. It was all very kind of calm and measured. It was as if, right, job's only half done. Like when you compare it to the first win in Soldier Field and the elation there and the celebrations, it was like Giant Stadium again almost. And yeah, exactly. But yeah, it does feel like they sat down in a meeting last month and on the board they had series victory. So yeah, I mean, and geez, they're in a great position to do it.
Let's talk about those 5 key matchups that are going to define the final test then. So you've got James Ryan versus Sam Whitelock first. After the first test and James Ryan's performance, you would have been like, he really needs to make a bit of a comeback here. And lo and behold, second test, he was right on it.
Absolutely. I think that was his strongest performance in a long time. Like, we kind of forget about Ryan. There's so much pressure being heaped on him. Like, he basically burst onto the scene in 2018 and he was almost like he was pre-packaged to give this world-class player. Was straight out the gate, he was delivering phenomenal performances, man of the match, week in, week out. Like, he'd be handed these stat sheets after games and he'd be out tackling and out carrying most of the back row forwards. And he did probably have a little bit of a dip the last couple of years, but I suppose, unlike a lot of other players, you look at someone maybe like Joe Quaid and who came into the team and would just flourish as a full back, just do your thing, and he's flourished. And there's plenty of other guys like that. Ryan kind of came into the team, was flying, and then he was told, we'd like you to run the line out, James. We'd like you to be the next captain. We'd like you to be the leadership team. We want you to bulk up and do that kind of tight head scrummaging role. So I imagine it hasn't rested easy on his shoulders. And conversely, I think he did a bit of a job with the line out last week. But the key factor there was Sam Whitelock wasn't out, and he's back now. And that's a huge game changer for the All Blacks. Like, I think Ireland, there are a couple of lads, Sexton and or Furlong, if they're missing, I think Ireland are really vulnerable. And I think Whitelock falls into that category for the All Blacks. I think if he's there, they're a totally different proposition. Like, I think Ron Gar wrote a very good column about him in Examiner a few weeks ago, just about the kind of player he is, but the assurance he gives his teammates, the leadership he has, the work he does in the line out, his experience. Like, he's a winner, like stockpiling Super Rugby titles, second most capped All Black of all time, like serious player. And then he had, by his own standards, Whitelock had a quiet season in Super Rugby, but then in the final against the Blues, he switched it on, best player on the pitch, destroyed the Blues line out. So yeah, this is serious now. And I mean, Ryan's been, like, a few years ago, everyone was talking about Ryan putting him in that kind of potential world class bracket. If he does against Whitelock this weekend, then that conversation is back in again.
Yeah, Retallick and Whitelock were the lock pairing when they won the Rugby World Cup final all the way back in 2015. So, like, that's the level that we're operating at here. And it would be interesting to see if Henderson was around. Does Henderson start? Where does Tadhg Beirne play in that instance? Maybe because of Tadhg Beirne's injury in the build-up to this, he might not have started the first test if Henderson had been available, or maybe he would have started instead of Peter O'Mahony and Peter O'Mahony be on the bench. I don't know. It's impossible to know. But or maybe James Ryan might not have started. So it's a big opportunity for him to pit himself against the world's best and remind us all of that narrative that we had at the start of his career, as opposed to the one which was there more recently, that like maybe he's just a level below these guys. So that's the first one. The next one is Peter O'Mahony versus Sam Cane, which obviously is pretty interesting. It's a little bit of spice to this week.
Absolutely, like it's not necessarily head to head, but yeah, like I think Kane kind of laughed that off. He did a little pitch side interview during the week about O'Mahony's alleged sledging towards the second test. But I think even before that, I think Kane would have been really stung by what happened in Dunedin, and he's a guy who there's a lot of things being questioned about him. His place in the team is being questioned. His captaincy is being questioned. Like, I'd expect a huge reaction when he's still a fine player. Like, there's been, again, you talk about expectation with Kane, I guess, as O'Mahony might have alluded to, he was trying to fill the boots of Richie McCaw. That's no mean feat. On top of that, he was given the captaincy after Kieran Reid retired, like, as two icons of New Zealand rugby, and he's trying to fill both roles. And then you have O'Mahony, who just, again, it's amazing. Like, I don't have the stat to hand, but it must be getting to double figures the amount of times under Farrell that he's been benched and recalled. I mean, first game Farrell ever had in charge, he stuck O'Mahony on the bench and gave Doris his first cap against Scotland back in 2020. He just keeps coming back and delivering as well. So that'll be amazing. I think first 10-15 minutes between those two is going to be fascinating, because they kind of set the emotional level for both teams. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Next one is Caelan Doris versus Artie Savea, and while your line was down there, I was making the point that it's a completely different New Zealand team this week if Artie Savea stays on the field, because he's one of their biggest contributors. Again, if you're talking about emotional heartbeat, he's the man for them, and he's so brilliant. Like, it was amazing to see Doris's performance last week, but it was also a Doris performance where Savea wasn't on the field. So this hopefully will be titanic if Doris can show us the form that he showed last week as opposed to his first game.
Exactly, yeah. This is proper head to head now. First test, like, Sevilla kind of schooled Doris. Like, we've all hyped up Doris, and a lot of it's been justified. Like, Doris is the kind of guy you look at and say he can do everything, but Sevilla's the guy who can do everything, and he was untouchable in the first test in Eden Park. That try ran through Henshaw, Ringrose and others, like, they weren't there. Can do the line out, can get over the ball, he can carry, he's explosive. And as he said last weekend, because there's a bit of a cock up there or whatever it was, he was on the pitch for most of the game. Doris had a stormer. Now, hopefully the two lads will be on the pitch for 80 minutes, and let's see how they go.
Andrew Porter versus Nipo Lalala. Lalala's coming into the team here, and it's another challenge for Porter. In the first game they were penalised, in the second game they got the upper hand.
Yeah, they seem to fix it, and the big thing was, like, Porter an absolute stormer. Again, you'll probably season best performance, the brace, scrummaged really well. Like, the guy Tuanga just wasn't at the races, missed that early tackle on Byrne that led to the line break that eventually led to Porter's first try. Didn't scrummage particularly well. Had to do 80 minutes after his replacement Tayaba got sent off. But yeah, and has been kind of brought in to shore things up, 40 caps, bring a bit of experience. But it's another big one for Porter. But you think he'll fancy it again, like, despite the minutes he's racking up. But it's interesting. Like, it's Tuanga, like, he suffered as a result of Porter's performance last weekend.
Yeah, and they've made a lot of changes. They're under pressure. They're backs to the wall. If we can just get off to a good start again for the third week in a row, there will be some doubt in the New Zealand minds. And then the last one, obviously, is the key battle in the entire game. Let's hope that Johnny Sexton is fit to play 76, 77, 78 minutes. It's Sexton versus Beauden Barrett. Beauden Barrett's been grand, like, good in bits, but grand, you would say, over the first two tests. Not the world-class Beauden Barrett that we've come to expect, the 9.5 out of 10 performances that he was so famous for.
Yeah, it's a funny one of Barrett, and we're speaking to people in New Zealand, like, in terms of form this season in Super Rugby, even in that final, like, Wishy Mo'unga, he's the man shooting the lights out, but I feel as a Foster, he's leaning on Barrett because he's been there and done it so many times, and he has the experience. But as I said, he hasn't, for a guy of his talents, and we know all about him, what he can do to Ireland. As I said, the series has kind of passed him by. The worry is that he finds his mojo in Wellington, and we see a bit more of a free running, line breaking Barrett that we know we know the game he has. But like Sexton, what else can you say? He's 37 this week, and he's absolutely flying.
Yeah, as good as he's ever been for Ireland.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard in terms of just his control and his ease, and a lot of things. He's improved so many things, even in terms of the captaincy, his body language on the pitch, the way he's dealing with referees, his temperament, like, as well as like his attacking play and his kicking and his decision making is top class. But all those things, he's tightened all those things up in the last couple of years as well.
That's a fair point, actually. Yeah. In the first game, when there were crazy decisions being made, there might have been an overreaction in the early stages of his captaincy, but it was much calmer, and even calmer last week as well.
And he seems to be like, there's a couple of, like, he's a bit resigned against some of the older referees, some of the French referees, but it seems like he's getting a good rapport with some of the younger refs now. And yeah, as he said, like, he think of a couple of years ago, that substitution when he was taken off for Ross Byrne in Paris, and you know, he got caught in the big screen kind of gesticulating, like, oh, that seems to have gone. He's a lot more measured now, and like he's still a hugely emotional player. He, you know, wears his heart on his sleeve. That comes out in his play, but I feel he's just, that's a part of the thing that's gone under the radar. Just in terms of the captaincy, he's really, those little kind of nuances, he's really picked up his game there as well.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's that big question again, what if he's not there? But you're look, yeah.
Yeah, Prey was the consensus earlier on in the week. Rory, what's going to happen?
What's going to happen? I do think there's going to be a massive reaction from New Zealand. I would back them to win it. I don't think they're going to win by much. I would say, if I was going to make a prediction, I'd maybe say New Zealand between 8 and 12 points, I would say. But I would expect Ireland, a very good Ireland performance going down fighting. But as I think New Zealand, there'll be a big reaction. I also think that bench as well is stacked. I think that'll make a huge difference in the last quarter.
Yeah, okay.
Fortunately.
This is the little period in advance of the game where we all get to believe anything is possible. We should enjoy that, because 8:05 on Saturday morning, things could go pear-shaped. Rory, good stuff. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thanks, all the best.
That's Rory Keane there. You can read stuff in the Mail. There is Ian Poulter is joined top of the leaderboard at the moment on 3 under par through 9 holes at St Andrews. At the moment, the various Irish lads not out just yet. We'll be updating you on these across the day, but just scrolling through the leaderboard to see if there's any of the Irish lads on course. Seamus Powers 1 over through 5 holes. John Daly 2 over through 6, and that is it in terms of the Irish. But some good early scores. There's Brandon Woo's on 3 under. Yu Hyun Kim on 3 under, Cameron Tringale on 3 under, Ian Poulter on 3 under as well. They're the golf scores at the moment. We'll obviously keep you up to date on that across the day on the network, on the Go Loud network of stations every hour on the air with our sports news. Tomorrow, Aisling O'Reilly hosting. Owen is live in Kilkenny, and we'll continue our build up to Sunday's All-Ireland Hurling final. Plus, All Blacks legend Justin Marshall will be on the line ahead of the decider on Saturday in Wellington. And a reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's Brian O'Driscoll previewing the game. Enjoy.
So yesterday in Wellington, a win for Ireland against the Merry All Blacks, 30 points to 24. That's a second win of this tour for Ireland, and we stay in Wellington for Saturday's finale. Test number 3. We have the series on the line. We have an opportunity for Ireland to make more history. We have an All Blacks coach under pressure for his job. So it's fair to say this is all coming to the boil very, very nicely. Brian O'Driscoll, great to have you on.
Yeah, Joe, good to be back.
Lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about. Yeah, I've been away on my holidays and I've missed quite a lot of action. I did try and disconnect from it, so I'm on catch up. But yeah, obviously it's very hard to stay disconnected from anything now with social media. And so even though I was away on a different time zone, waking up, particularly the second test, that it's been an Irish victory when you look and you've got 21 WhatsApps, at first thing in the morning. So, very exciting times from an Irish perspective. And all the more reinforced now with that Maori victory yesterday. Like, what does that do for the feel-good factor within the overall squad? Sometimes the dirt trackers, as they're known, the kind of second string, feel disconnected from the test series, but it's been a really clever ploy of having those 2 Maori games in weeks 1 and 3. Ordinarily, you'd look at weeks 1 and 2 and then focus on the test match for week 3. But I think that's been really clever in keeping everyone very focused on and part of the squad. And now all the more the fact that they've gotten the victory in that Maori game just gives that burst of energy going into, you know, your final 3 or 4 days of your season before you get to sit on a sun lounger for a few weeks. So it's just built up perfectly for where they'd want to be pitched at the right level, knowing that they've got one more huge 80-minute performance in them.
That's an interesting point you make. Nothing worse, I'm sure, than half of a travelling party checking out with 10, 12 days of a tour left.
Well, it happens so often on Lions tours in particular, you know, that you see midweek games often, you know, throughout the test series in the first and second week, and then they keep it away from the third because, you know, tired bodies, and I don't want it to distract from what might be, you know, a series in the balance. Whereas I think this has been really smart, and it does keep people connected. You know, it's a huge distraction for players gone off tour when they know their final game is the Tuesday of the second week, knowing that there's still a week and a half to go before, you know, and all they're going to be doing is holding hit shields. And, you know, it depends on your circumstance, depends on what's been gone on in the tour, whether you've had some success from it. And on paper, this tour looked precarious, always does anytime you go down to New Zealand, even with our recent success against them, you know. But what has transpired has been fantastic so far. We talked beforehand as to what would be perceived as success. You know, you have to win minimum a game, and ideally one in the Maori's game, one test match. So I think already, irrespective of what comes at the weekend, this has been a very, very successful tour. There's no doubt. But those players are certainly not thinking that with a few days to go. They smell blood now. They think there's a test series victory. They didn't manage it in South Africa back in 2016, was it? Yeah. They lost narrowly. They managed it in Australia. Now can they go to the most difficult, challenging place to go on tour and pick up a series against the mighty All Blacks? Well, they'll feel as though they definitely can.
I remember we spoke on the eve of this tour, and from memory, your sense then was that as the reality of this tour was dawning, there was real trepidation. I mean, we were talking about a distinct possibility, at least. You could easily go out there and lose 5 games if things unravel.
Oh, that could have happened. There's no doubt. But it just shows the kind of mental capacity of where this team is, the strength and depth, the level of coaching, the hunger and appetite, you know, for continual improvement, that they have gone out. And even though they were beaten in the first test, that there was they weren't deflated by it, that they came back and reacted. And, you know, certainly some things went their way, particularly with, you know, the number advantage in the second test. But that comes down to very good discipline versus very bad discipline. That's not, you know, we can't look at the referee and feel very fortuitous with some of those decisions. That was what it was. So they completely outplayed the All Blacks in the second test, if I'm honest. And, you know, they had them scrambling. They had the All Blacks running out of ideas, which you don't see very often. I think we did see it back in November. And we're always mindful in those November games, even though we've managed to win a couple of them against the All Blacks in the last 3 or 4 years, that it is the end of their tour, that they have one eye on their holidays. So to put ourselves in that position now and win a test match and outplay them in their own patch, I think gives such a shot in the arm of confidence going into looking down, you know, what might be a possible quarter-final match against them in France in 15 months' time. So all these things are just building. I think I'm always mindful of not getting caught up in the euphoria of it all, that, you know, we've been in similar territory in the past. It's building, but there's still pitfalls to be avoided, and some that I would still be extremely nervous about as we move forward. And we'll be going back over old territory here. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what the selection will be this weekend. You know, at the start of the tour,
you're not just anticipating best team possible.
It will be, but there's no way they would have thought that before the start of the tour. There would have been a vision to have played certainly, to have benched Johnny on one of the 3 occasions, to have started one of the other 10s, that had to have been an initial policy, but that's all been thrown out. It's all been shelved. It's all been, put to the side. The kind of thoughts of building for the World Cup are not in line of sight right now. It's very much about a series victory and here and now. I guess there's good and bad to that. Imagine going down and winning a series in New Zealand, that'll be talked about forevermore. But yet, no matter what, there's always going to be, the nervousness around that game time for those players that don't have initials beginning with JS.
Would you rather have on your CV a World Cup semi-finalist or won a series in New Zealand with Ireland?
Oh, good question, Joe. Very good question. I don't think you could go, oh, it'd be great to go and win, get to a semi-final and lose. I think a series victory in New Zealand is greater than a semi-final of a World Cup, being honest. It is, because it's something tangible. I don't know whether, I presume there's a shield or a cup of some sort. There is one for every series these days. So there is something at the end to hold on to go, we beat this. By the way, we beat New Zealand in their own backyard. Versus, didn't we do great? We got to a semi-final, which I know that we've never gotten to. But I think what's more of a balanced argument would be the prospect of getting to a final versus a series victory. Into a World Cup final with it still to play versus a series victory against the All Blacks, I think that's more on par. But a semi-final of a World Cup versus a series victory, I think the series victory in New Zealand, you think about the Lions talking about it in 71. Like, how many teams have gone? When was the last time
94
they were beaten?
94, the last time they lost a series at home.
Yeah. There you go. I think. Yeah, maybe I'm a bit distracted by the World Cup, that this is still enormous in its own right, but it doesn't mean that there isn't going to be another missed opportunity for guys getting game time, and those games are beginning to run out.
Any headline thoughts from the Maori win?
Again, I've skated through the game very quickly. I think what's really impressive is a young team having beaten and coming back from 17-5 down at halftime. I think that's really impressive, to not panic, to not feel as though you've been overpowered, that you're a young, relatively inexperienced team, certainly lots of combinations playing together for the first time. So for them to be able to find a way to get back into the game, to create opportunities for themselves, to have cool head at clear moments, I think there's been a huge amount to take from that, taking really good opportunities, always looking to play heads up rugby. The Larmer try from the quick line out from Earls, that's brilliant. It's just one step ahead, and that shows a real appetite and an anticipation for what's next, rather than sitting on your laurels and taking a break. It's always, next moment. How can we create something? How can we put them under pressure and strain them and stress them? I'm also impressed with Kieran Treadwell. I think he's been really physical. I think I would have been one that would have had question marks around his selection, within the environment. I guess I haven't been so impressed to think automatically, he's got to be a future Ireland international, but he has thrown his body around. He's put in some really big shots. He's been effective when he's come off the bench. I've been impressed with him. I know McCarthy's is a coming young player, but for now, Treadwell, I think, has been a real find in an area that we've probably felt a vulnerability, over the course of the last few months, where we had a great depth of second rows, and all of a sudden that seems to have evaporated.
Well, Kieran Treadwell is 26 years of age, and he was only invited into the Six Nations squad on account of Ultan Delan's departure. And generally at Ulster, he's sitting behind Henderson and Alan O'Connor. Andy Farrell, you think the way he plumbed for Gibson Park ahead of most people, I think Andy Farrell, amongst other things, has a real eye for a player.
I think he does. I agree with you. I think he's not afraid to select from obviously the level behind frontier players for province. I think he obviously has an eye for what he thinks a player can add to his environment, to the way he wants to play the game. Be it an explosiveness, a ball carrying ability, a defensive nous, a collision winner. So I think he definitely has earmarked certain players, and as a result, there's certain players that feel as though they've warranted inclusion into a squad but haven't quite made it. And a player like Jack O'Donoghu's an obvious omission from this tour, where is there something within Andy Farrell's thinking that he just doesn't fit into his role remit with what he's looking for in one of his back rowers? I know it's a very, keenly contested area in this Irish team at the moment, great strength and depth, but with every one of those selections that have been maybe a little bit shocking or a little left field, there've been those omissions that have been, I suppose, have countered that opinion piece too. So
I'm sure you would have experienced that as a player at times, where on the outside we would have wondered about a certain player, and you have that intimate knowledge being on a pitch with someone or seeing them in training every day, where everyone's asking, why isn't X doing better? And you say, he has this thing, and that's it.
Earlsey was that guy. Earlsey was that guy for years, and there was always question marks about Keith around why isn't he doing it, provincially, and when he's getting his opportunity at international level. He burst on the scene very, very young as a 19-year-old into that, Munster Heineken Cup winning team in 08, sat on the bench and went on the Lions tour in 09. So, I guess you've so much learning to do in those early years, but he had shown so much potential at training that it was very hard for coaches to leave him out when he was ripping up the first 15 as a bag carrier when we were playing defense, and he'd tear us apart, and you were like, geez, this guy really has proper X factor. So he's one that immediately stands out, and then he develops and hones and adds aspects to his game. And now look at the career that he's had, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years. He's been a really important component to that Irish setup. Not involved in every game, but when he is involved, he's never disappointed.
So Kieran Frawley got generally, in most people's eyes, very good reviews, and it's been a very good tour for him. And he was somebody, when we were looking at 10 at the start of the tour, we wondered, he may fill in at 10 a bit, and boy, has he. So I presume he's impressed you, and then you can't not mention Frawley without Carbery. You've been away, so just to give you a sense, like Keith Wood was on the show this week, speaking to Ger yesterday, and he was just reiterating the sense he has that Carbery is very, very low in confidence at the moment, or not quite humming, and he's missed quite a few tackles. I was listening to Luke Fitzgerald in his podcast, and Luke didn't feel good saying this, and he was at pains to say, I don't feel good to say it, but I just feel he's lost his nerve a touch, and who knows why that might be. So there's a sense of one on the rise and one, if not quite in decline, but just stagnating a touch when this was a big opportunity?
Yeah, I think we're all a little bit frustrated by the development of Joey because of how he burst onto the scene. When you win your first test and come on against the All Blacks in Soldier Field, and you're able to close out the game with these amazing nerves of, it's like the confidence of youth, where it feels as though it's just slightly been eroded away from him. And whether that's come through, the captaincy being given to Johnny, he's obviously very much, playing for a 23 spot rather than a starting berth. He's had this succession of injuries that just haven't allowed him to get into any real continuity of play. I think the style of rugby being played down in Munster maybe hasn't evolved into what he anticipated when he joined the club a few years ago, leaving Leinster and all of their success. So I think a multitude of factors have contributed to him not transpiring thus far. I'm not clouding or shutting him out, but thus far turning into the player that we thought he was going to as a 21, 22-year-old when he burst onto the scene. And confidence is transient. It comes and it goes, and it's sometimes difficult to get and very easy to lose. And it's he does look as though he's someone that is a little bit shaky at the moment. It has to be a tough environment for him going in. He's not starting very often. It's very hard, it's not just about, he's getting 15, 20 minutes. It's the whole week. It's controlling the team for the week. It's being the voice. It's dictating play. And I think that's what, obviously, Johnny is one of his great strengths. But Joey, in that environment, it has to be massively challenging, knowing that his opposition is, the most important player in the environment, and the captain and the leader and the heartbeat of everything. And tens need to be alphas. They have to be dominant. They have to bark orders. They have to be controlling things. They have to be the central voice. And in the past, when kind of Raj and David Humphreys were vying for position, and Raj and Johnny both of them were comfortable to be loud when they were in the position. But it's very difficult when the captain is the guy that is in that starting berth. So I feel for him. I don't think he lacks bravery, but I think he looks a little bit frail at the moment. He does. He looks physically. I wouldn't like to draw comparisons to Raj because Raj was brave, but just physically sometimes couldn't match up to the size of some of the ball carriers that were coming at him. And I feel there's an element of that to Joey as well, that it's not that he's not trying. His tackle technique is good, just physically being overpowered. And I think there's definitely a confidence piece in the hit there as well, where he knows that things are just not quite going the way they want to. And he's hanging in there at the moment. I think that's the concern. It's that now there's a question mark, this debate around, do we look at an alternative option at 10 on the bench? Is Frawley that guy? Because we know thus far that it hasn't really worked for Billy Burns, for Ross Byrne. Harry Byrne hasn't been able to stay fit. So Frawley is obviously the guy that's on tour and that poses the greatest threat. And now he's shown relatively well in his couple of outings against the Maori All Blacks.
He was speaking to the media and made it clear he doesn't want to be a jack of all trades, and he was pushed a little bit. Well, does that mean you want to be just Leinster 10? And he said, well, not necessarily, because the 12 at Leinster is akin to a second playmaker, so I sort of feel like I'm developing in that sense. But I don't know if that's really satisfactory. Can you give us an insight here as best you can, because this all feels like informal conversations and strength of personality decides these things. Say Andy Farrell decides, I want Frawley to get X number of minutes at 10 across this season. It's very important. David Nucifora agrees with me. They sit down with Leo Cullen. To what extent, as you understand it, can the IRFU force Leinster's hand?
I don't think that they can force their hand. I really don't. I think, you can encourage someone to do it, but ultimately, if the coaches there don't feel as though it's in the best interests of the team in particular games, they're entitled to go with what works for them. I think they're not going to be so misaligned that they won't think that Frawley would be a really good, viable option at 10, particularly on the back of Leinster's finish to the season. Unfortunately for Ross Byrne, it wasn't a good climax to the season for him personally. So I think Leinster have to look at the future as to what that position looks like. Ross had improved over the course of the season, but in the clutch matches, it didn't happen for him. Now Frawley's been given the opportunity, looks as though he's taking it. I think there's been not a glut of 10s, but plenty of 10s, but not so many 12s in the Leinster environment. But now that it hasn't worked out at 10, I think we will see more of Frawley naturally in the 10 position going forward. Also, the Leon player, Charlie Natai, coming in at 12, which I thought was a strange signing, but maybe that's all part of the master plan, that now the Frawley is going to play more of a 10 role. That's why Natai has been brought in to play 12 in those games that Robbie Henshaw's not being around. And I think naturally now, on the back of what Stuart Lancaster and Leo Cullen will have seen in this test series or these Maori games as well, they will feel very positive and comfortable with what Frawley has offered back at a 10 position. It's lovely to have someone that's capable of playing both, But the reality is, as a 10, you want to play there as often as you can. You don't want to be this jack of all trades. He's only ever going to be a jack of two trades, of 10 and 12. And, lots of other players are capable of playing both. Dan Carter played it a lot. Andre Pollard is doing it a lot. There's other good footballers that are capable of doing the two. But if you ask Kieran Frawley, if his opportunity is going to be at 10 for Ireland going forward, he's going to want to play there a hell of a lot more for Leinster too.
So Test 2 then, it felt like Ireland were utterly dominant.
It really did. I agree. They, in many ways, they should have won by more. They created more opportunities. There were, that yellow card where Ringrose got taken out. I wonder, I was trying to look back on that. I think it's probably a penalty try if Johnny throws the pass. And I think that's why it's not given as a penalty try in my head. They said that there was cover. I'm not sure about that. But I think if Johnny pops that pass to Ringrose, whether he's going to get in or not, or I think that's it. I think that's going to be a penalty try. And so then the James Lowe one as well. They created other chances for themselves. The only thing I would say, and we're talking so much about the shape and, the choices and, the ball carry and everything. For me, what's been a huge part of Ireland's evolution, they've got this amazing defence now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.